When I was 15 years old, a YouTube channel started uploading these weekly vlog episodes. They uploaded multiple times a week, and it was like a 3-minute episode of this character sitting down and telling you about their lives. I understood enough to know that Pride and Prejudice was a book. It wasn't one that I had read. I was being homeschooled and very deeply sheltered by people who weren't intellectual in the way that would have had them encouraging me to read actual books during that homeschooling. I read Pride and Prejudice because a YouTube series adapted it. I didn't know anything about the plot or the characters other than what was slowly unraveling to me through this story as it was being told. And I loved it. I loved it. I still love it. I still truly, genuinely think that this is one of the best and most passionate adaptations I've ever seen, and one of the most creative uses of the platform. The Lizzie Bennet Diaries was the first short-form YouTube fictionalized content that I was exposed to. I didn't know such a thing even existed, and it is what's in the back of my mind anytime I see or hear about something else like it. This, to me, is the gold standard of creative, adaptive endeavors on YouTube, and honestly, of Jane Austen adaptations in general. Obviously, I'm really excited about this one. I forgot how much I love this series until I started watching it again, no matter how large of a place I've always known it has in my heart. Even if you haven't already read and enjoyed, or maybe if you read and didn't enjoy Pride and Prejudice, there is still plenty here that I think you'll find interesting about the way that the people behind the Lizzie Bennet Diaries adapted it and used the platform.
My name is Lizzie Bennet. My name is Lizzie Bennet. My name is Lizzie Bennet.
My name is Ophi YouTube Videos, and this is my Lizzie Bennet Diaries retrospective. If you aren't already familiar with Pride and Prejudice, please don't worry about it. You will be by the end of this video if you stick around with me. We're going to go over the plot of the book as it is adapted into the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. We'll also be talking about some other adaptations, and I've pulled in a lot of visuals from the 2005 movie as well as the 1995 BBC adaptation.
So I'm Lizzie, or Elizabeth, if you're my mother and I did something to piss you off. I like rain, classic novels, and any movie starring Colin Firth.
Finally, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I personally thought you were very good in Mamma Mia.
And while we do have a lot to say about Elizabeth Bennet, we're gonna hold off on that just for a little bit. See, the thing about Elizabeth Bennet is that she has so greatly outlived the source material of her original novel that we really can't help but to think of her in a way that is comparative. That's how Elizabeth is described to the reader, and it's something that the Lizzie Bennet Diaries also does a really good job of putting into the first few episodes so that you really have this kind of context for where she's coming from. So we'll be talking about Elizabeth a lot more down the road as her own character and her own person, but I happen to agree with Jane Austen that the best way to flesh out this character is to show us a little bit more about her family.
I need more friends. And less sisters.
One of the first things that we see change is that we have consolidated Elizabeth's younger sisters. In the book, in addition to a younger sister named Lydia, there's also a sister named Kitty.
But I did get a cat. I named her Kitty. She follows me around everywhere.
And a sister named Mary.
Mary, our cousin, Mary.
The Lizzie Bennet Diaries is genuinely masterful in how they adapted Lydia. This is a character who has almost nothing to do in the book other than towards the end, and especially the way that she is performed in this adaptation by Mary Kate Wiles is just, it's bananas. It's so good. I love it so, so much, and I always have. Just like Elizabeth, though, we do not know enough about her yet for me to start telling you things without sort of spilling the beans on how things are going to unfold. So let's keep going.
And there's the eldest Bennet sister, Jane. Practically perfect in every way.
One of these days, Lizzie, someone will catch your eye, and then you'll have to watch your tone.
Pretty much my best friend. Frustrates her mom to no end that Jane hasn't snatched up a husband yet. She's doing so much more with her life than prancing around as some trophy wife.
Again, Elizabeth is best defined in contrasts, and there are a lot of really great contrasts to make with her both within and outside of her family. The first outside of her family contrast that we're going to talk about today is her best friend Charlotte. I've kind of glossed over Jane, similarly to how I glossed over Lydia. We'll be talking about Jane more later as the plot begins to unfold, and we will definitely be talking about Charlotte more later as the plot begins to unfold. I really like what they did with Charlotte. Again, I say that about everything that they adapted, but still, Charlotte in particular is a high point in this series. She doesn't have as much to do in the book because there are just a lot of characters in the book. She's important to Elizabeth, and I liked the way that they adapted what needs to happen for the plot, but I also just really like the things that they added between the two of them. She's basically Lizzie's editor, producer for her video blogs. Lizzie talks to the camera and sends her the footage, or sometimes she'll be there while she's filming. And she'll jump in either to help Lizzie tell the story the way that she saw it, or at times to correct and give us a little bit of an indication that Elizabeth might not be our most flawless narrator. This show is based on a book that is very aware of its main character's flaws, and Lizzie Bennet is kind of a dick. She would have to be putting all of this online in the first place, and I just really like the way that they were able to rationalize all of that without having her be completely off-putting.
You cannot use the internet as a safety blanket, Lizzie.
I can try! Alright, fine.
I like the source material that Ashley Clements was given, but I think that that is a credit to the actress. She plays believably fed up, and it's fun to watch. One of the biggest uses that they find for Charlotte is one of the things that I find most endearing about this series, which is the element of costume theater. You might have noticed from the clips that I've already pulled, but primarily Lizzie Bennet Diaries takes place in Lizzie Bennet's bedroom. There are some episodes that take place in other locations, which we'll get to as we discuss the plot, but for the sake of, studio production, this was a girl sitting down and talking to her camera. A lot of the story progression that we get comes in the form of either little interrupting interludes from Elizabeth's sisters, or when it's something that we need a bit more context for and want to devote less time to setting up, they'll just cut to costume theater. There are really easily identifiable markings, like Darcy wears a bow tie and a pageboy hat. She'll have other characters who know about her blog come on and play as Darcy in the scenes where she's talking shit about him because it doesn't make sense for him to be on her blog. I really love that for a lot of reasons. I think that it leads to a lot of really great character moments.
Never say no in an improv. You aren't allowed to deny your partner's reality. I read it online. Okay. I guess it is a surprise.
Especially when you can tell how much fun these actors are having portraying these people, portraying each other. But also just, that's what I mean about using the platform in a way that makes sense. A lazier version of this would have had a spy camera situation as soon as Darcy is introduced. This really takes its time to amp up kind of what it would be for somebody else to see what Lizzie is portraying.
I think we would both agree that the men discovering your video diaries would be catastrophic. Especially for your sister's budding relationship with my dear brother.
Yeah, you're totally right.
Role-playing through it after the fact, especially when it is clearly colored by her own interpretations, and then even better if Charlotte or somebody else pops in later and says, no, that's not what happened, is just such a fun use of YouTube videos and the confessional vlog style format. And it's through that use of costume theater that we begin to develop more context about the plot. Mrs. Bennet is in a panic because a rich young man moved to town and she wants him to marry one of her daughters.
Well, man, a young man from Harvard working to become a doctor. I hear his family has quite the fortune. How perfect for our girls.
How can that possibly affect them?
Oh, Mr. Bennet, how can you be so tiresome? You know he must marry one of them.
How so? Oh, my dear husband, can't you imagine him with one of our daughters?
I find that rather difficult since I have yet to meet this young man.
And you must go meet him at once. Welcome him to the neighborhood. I will bake a pie. Let him know about our 3 eligible young daughters who are in desperate need of a rich, single man.
So we may not visit if you do not, as you well know, Mr. Bennet.
The first characters that I want to kind of take a moment to analyze, because this is the best place in the story to do that, are Mr. and Mrs. Bennet.
Have you no compassion for my poor nerves?
Oh, you mistake me, my dear. I have the highest respect for them. They've been my constant companions these 20 years.
The cast is small, and though people who are portrayed in costume theater do often show up later, we don't actually see Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. We see them portrayed through costume theater, usually Lizzie and Charlotte, sometimes Lizzie and one of her sisters. Honestly, I think that the lengths that Jane Austen went to flesh out Elizabeth's family go so far in making the novel something as compelling and long-lasting as it is. And I think Donald Sutherland's portrayal of the long-standing Mr. Bennet also did a little bit to tip the scales on that one.
Good heavens. People.
Characteristically, Mrs. Bennet is constantly frazzled and obsessed with marrying off her daughters. The story that we're going to be hearing and unfolding here in a little bit about Elizabeth and Darcy just doesn't work if we don't have Elizabeth grounded in as well as she is immediately by her parents. This is a miscommunication novel at its core, right? I don't think that this is a huge spoiler to say that the rich guy character in Pride and Prejudice, not a huge fan of Elizabeth's family at first. But we, as the reader, have gotten to see by this point some of the reason for that frustration and frazzlement that Mrs. Bennet has. She's not only upholding patriarchal standards by attempting to marry her daughters off. I mean, yeah, that's part of it. We're not getting into the whole, like, institution of marriage, especially back in those days here, but Mrs. Bennet isn't crazy. She, like, is conniving and scheming and maybe a little bit erratic about how she's acting on her fears, but her fears are not unfounded. She and her husband continued to try to have a boy because of the patriarchal bullshit about how land and money passes down. They have money that they're surviving on for now, but when Mr. Bennet dies, that money isn't going to stay with his widow. It will go to his next male relative. Even if Mrs. Bennet is successful in marrying off her daughters, none of them will get to keep the money that she's currently living on. And her husband is, like, not really concerned about that. Because Elizabeth and her father are framed as two parts on the same team, sort of, within the dividing lines of this family, we see that as the reasonable take. I mean, even with the financial aspect, I see that as the reasonable take. I like that this man isn't as obsessed with trying to marry his daughters off as he could be. I like that he and his daughter Elizabeth have this special relationship between the two of them where they can be a little bit snide and snarky with each other and it kind of goes over everybody else's head. It's fun. These characters are very fun and dynamic. And they need to be, because we need to be endeared by Elizabeth's upbringing and also to understand why a snob might be a little bit of a snob about it. So we meet the Bennets, and they are chaotic and loud. This is pretty much the same in the book as it is in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. She's trying to set them up. She's frustrated at her husband for not following the social etiquette that she's decided needs to be followed, where he introduces himself first.
He waits until Mom is so frustrated over him not meeting Bingley that she yells that she's sick of the whole thing and would be happy never to hear the name Bingley again. And that's when Dad says,
"Oh, that's too bad. I met him while he was getting his membership at the club, and he'll be at Ellen Gibson's wedding. Apparently, he's a friend of the groom. I told him all about our girls. There's no way to avoid meeting him now."
What is a ball in the novel is adapted into a wedding in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. Bingley will be at the wedding, and bound to meet one of the girls there. What happens is a natural love connection between Bing and Jane. They meet, they hit it off, they have a great time together, and they fall in insta-love. But Mrs. Bennet wasn't quite so willing to bet on that happening, so she had been scheming and continues for some time to scheme to push the two of them together.
Oh my god, tell me or get out.
Okay, so Mom paid me $10 to drive by Bing's on my way home from Marie's, and he only brought back one girl. So I talked to Marie, who texted Ben, who called his
Lydia.
cousin. She's just his sister. The girl we brought back, just his sister. Hello.
Alright, well at least Mom will be thrilled.
Jane also exists in contrast to Elizabeth. Jane is everything that Elizabeth isn't. She's sweet, she's nice, she's named after the author. And as a result, Elizabeth is very protective of her and a bit skeptical about this new guy. More skeptical because of his friend.
Alright, time for you to leave.
Wait, I'm not done. There was someone else, another man.
Wait, like frolicking in the meadows holding hands, another man?
No, dumbass! He brought a friend back with him, an incredibly hot, incredibly rich piece of man cake friend.
Does your infinite chain of sources know this ambiguously sexually oriented man cake's name?
Darcy.
Darcy? That's it? Is that his first name or his last name?
I don't know, I just heard them call him Darcy.
Wow, that's an awful name.
I think it's a great name. Isn't that Colin Firth's name in that Chubby Zellweger movie?
I do love that movie.
Lydia, my beloved, my darling, my favorite character in this web series. I forgive you. I know you're young, but my god, a crime to call Renee Zellweger chubby in Bridget Jones's Diary. So, while we're on the topic.
In Helen Fielding's book, The Edge of Reason, one of the most wonderful scenes was a scene in which Bridget Jones interviews the actor Colin Firth.
You know when you were in Pride and Prejudice and you had to dive into the lake?
Yes.
Well, when they wanted to do another take, would you have to take off the wet shirt and put a dry one on?
I think I probably did, yeah. The airborne bit that you see was done by a stuntman.
Well, it looked just like Mr. Darcy.
Yes, because he had stuck-on sideburns.
And when we first started making the movie, we were inundated with questions about how we were going to do it. Well, I have to admit, we never found the perfect answer. But one night, when filming was finished, Renee stayed in character and in costume as Bridget Jones, and Colin changed into his own clothes and became himself. And we shot this.
Hello, I'm here at the set of The Peace Broker to interview Colin Firth, heartthrob to millions and the star of the brilliant 90s BBC adaptation of Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah, among other things, that was 10 years ago.
But it was particularly brilliant when he came out of the water and everything.
I personally thought you were very good in Mamma Mia.
Anyway, it's nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you too.
We're here to get to know the real Colin Firth, the complex man behind the wet shirt. Can I just ask you, you know when you were in the wet shirt and everything, did you realise your nipples were showing through?
It's been lovely to meet you.
Bye.
Colin Firth very famously played Mr. Darcy in the 1995 BBC adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. I find something incredibly charming about him presumably knowing about Edge of Reason, which is a romance novel that was based loosely on Pride and Prejudice, and being like, well, I already know that guy.
Maybe this was the mysterious Mr. Right I'd been waiting my whole life to meet.
You remember Bridget?
Maybe not.
She used to run around your lawn with no clothes on, remember?
No, not as such.
I really like his portrayal of Mr. Darcy.
I think the insecurity is the key to him.
He's very similar to Mr. Darcy Mark I from Pride and Prejudice fame, and that, in fact, was the way in the first time round as well. At first, I thought the character's unplayable. He's a sort of strange, aloof icon. But once I realized that this is a man who's just embarrassed in a social situation and can't stand parties, then I realized that he was accessible in some way.
Colin Firth is exactly right, also, about Mr. Darcy being awkward and nervous.
I heard Bing telling Mrs. Gibson how painfully shy Darcy is and how glad he is she invited him because Darcy's been here for weeks and this is the first time he's met anyone.
Said that? Well, I don't care.
And though if you were like me, experiencing the first half or however far I got into the Lizzie Bennet Diaries before I forced myself to stop watching until I finished reading the book, you also wouldn't know this going in, but Lizzie is really hard on the guy, and for people who don't already understand what the draw of Pride and Prejudice is, I just don't want you thinking that she's getting shacked up with some irredeemable asshole at the end. She's getting shacked up. He's just not irredeemable. We see that nervousness coming in this adaptation, Bridget Jones's Diary, in the scene that I showed you earlier when he shuts down that mention of knowing Bridget as a child. So Bridget doesn't have a sister having a subplot with Bing in Bridget Jones's Diary, and that means that we're going to focus on the Elizabeth and Darcy of it all from that first night. And I think I didn't know until recently that Bridget Jones's Diary was an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. To be fair, they did change her name. I also think this is a really fun way to play with an adaptation inside of an adaptation, being like, oh, it's a Colin Firth movie, or just saying period romance instead of specifically saying that you're talking about Pride and Prejudice. I love that. I think it's cute every time they do it. So in Bridget Jones's Diary, their awkward conversation continues for a bit. Things that are mirroring something we'll see happen later as we talk about the book. Bridget's mother is trying to set her up with hot human rights divorcee Mark Darcy. Their first encounter, while Elizabeth is attempting to be friendly, he kind of shuts her down and rebuffs her.
New Year's resolution, drink less. Oh, and quit smoking. Oh. And keep New Year's resolutions. Oh. And stop talking total nonsense to strangers. In fact, stop talking full stop.
Yes, well, perhaps it's time to eat.
Crucially, she feels embarrassed by this and begins to form a negative opinion of him.
That Darcy, what a charmer! Stone freaking statue. Like, can't you just imagine fake happiness and force a smile? So there's me, being the lady, following his lead. More like swaying to his sway. It was like he was trying to hear the crickets in the next county. And when I asked him if he actually liked it here in town, not especially.
Will you dance, Mr. Darcy?
Not if I can help it.
You enjoy dancing? Not if I can help it. Glad to rock your world there, Darcy.
Which is then solidified by the end of the night when she hears him saying something mean.
Mother, I do not need a blind date, particularly not with some verbally incontinent spinster who smokes like a chimney, drinks like a fish, and dresses like her mother.
He actually thanked me for the dance. So then I head back to my wall where Charlotte is waiting. I give her the skinny, we laugh, and then we head outside. That's when I hear him talking to Bing. Out here.
This dance is super slamming. So is that Gigi Bennet. I wanna bang the out of her.
I've never seen so many pretty girls in my life.
You are dancing with the only handsome girl in the room.
She is the most beautiful creature I have ever beheld.
I hate dancing. It's a waste of time, like saying nice things to people. Besides, none of these girls stand up to my ridiculous standards.
But her sister Elizabeth is very agreeable.
I know she's not that great looking, but you could do worse.
Perfectly tolerable, I dare say. Not handsome enough to tempt me. You'd better return to your partner and enjoy her smiles. You're wasting your time with me.
You're dancing with the only tolerable girl in the room, so stop wasting your time with me. Sure, Lizzie's decent enough, but why would I continue to dance with her when no one else does? I mean, who is he to... I mean, not even gonna give him the satisfaction.
When you're adapting this first thing that Darcy says about Elizabeth, it's gotta be mean. Even though he comes around later and he has character growth, he has to make a snap judgment of her that is maybe a little accurate and also a lot mean. And unfortunately for Elizabeth, or Bridget in this case, she's got to hear it.
Well, Mr. Darcy, I hope it's not too lonely on the pedestal you've put yourself on. It's safe to say, I like you even less than you like me.
When did you first discover the power of poetry in driving away love?
I thought the poetry was the food of love.
Of a fine, stout love, it may. But if it is only a vague inclination, I'm convinced one poor sonnet will kill it stone dead.
So what do you recommend to encourage affection?
Dancing. Even if one's partner is barely tolerable.
Bitch, I said what I said. Lizzie Bennet, decent enough.
Those negative first impressions of each other are only compounded by their next few interactions.
So, this song is really catchy. I hear it's popular and really good for dancing. You like this kind of music, right? I mean, that's what Caroline said. Not that we talk about you, but yeah, it's, dance music.
And this is the part where she ignored him.
I said this music, it's, really good for dancing, yeah?
See, that is by no means an invitation to dance.
Lizzie, it's implied. He wanted to dance.
The only thing he wanted was for me to say that I like popular music so that he could mock me with his mocking words and his mocking face and his beady little mocking eyes.
I know, you told him as much.
Well, I didn't say exactly that.
You might as well have. Oh wait, didn't something else happen after that?
I mean, you seem to go out of your way to try to make me feel like a complete idiot every time I see you. And you really needn't bother. I already feel like an idiot most of the time anyway. With or without a fireman's pole.
I know you're only saying this so you can make fun of my tastes. I'd rather not give you the pleasure, so just go ahead and hate me anyway.
Hate you? I would never dare hate you.
Good night.
Look, I'm sorry if I've been...
What?
I don't think you're an idiot at all. I mean, there are elements of the ridiculous about you. Your mother's pretty interesting. And you really are an appallingly bad public speaker. And you tend to let whatever's in your head come out of your mouth without much consideration of the consequences. I realized that when I met you that I was unforgivably rude and wearing a reindeer jumper that my mother had given me the day before. But the thing is, what I'm trying to say very inarticulately is that, in fact, perhaps despite appearances, I like you very much.
Apart from the smoking and the drinking and the vulgar mother and the verbal diarrhea.
No, I like you very much. Just as you are.
He just wanted to prove that he was morally superior. Have you not been following his MO? Vanity, pride.
And you're sure your interpretations are always correct?
I trust my gut, and my gut is always right. Almost.
You were wrong about Bing.
I hadn't met the guy yet.
So Elizabeth changes her mind about Bing much, much quicker than she does about Darcy. His involvement with Darcy at first, as well as the fact that it's essentially what she considers to be an arranged marriage by her mother, meant that she was very hesitant before she started getting to know him.
Lizzie's having a bit of a crisis. Because her sister Jane actually likes the guy her mother wants her to marry.
Mr. Bingley is just what a young man ought to be. Sensible, good-humoured.
Handsome, conveniently rich.
You know perfectly well I do not believe marriage
I
should be driven by
agree
thoughts of money.
The guy who, it turns out, is actually pleasant and nice and funny. But that Lizzie had already made up her mind to hate. And Lizzie hates changing her mind.
For the sake of moving things along and finally starting to get to talk about Darcy before we were an hour into this video, I moved my Jane analysis further in, like I had said earlier. Jane is Elizabeth Bennet's best friend. That's true in the book and in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries adaptation. Even with the addition of Charlotte and how much I really enjoy the way that those two play off of each other, Jane and Elizabeth are sisters, and that's a whole thing. Jane is everything that Elizabeth doesn't see in herself. And Bing is a perfect fit for her. They meet and immediately click together. Every interaction that they have leaves Jane happy and blushy and giddy. And Elizabeth is eventually warmed to this once she meets Bing and sees for herself that he's a nice, genuine man.
Oh my god, I'm gonna lose Jane. I mean, I'm not gonna lose her, but she's gonna leave me and go live with Bing.
Once those interactions have been rolling, Mrs. Bennet does not stop scheming.
We fully expect a most advantageous marriage.
While Lizzie is at VidCon, a plot point that we will be talking about in a moment, I promise, she gets the news that she has to stay for an extended period of time with Darcy and Bing's sister Caroline in Bing's mansion, Netherfield, because the other option is to stay with that cousin that their sister got turned into in the adaptation and her parents in a little house.
Good Lord, Miss Elizabeth, did you walk here?
I did.
So they stay, and she ends up having a lot more interactions with Darcy. This is the first time that we see characters who have been discussed in the web series come there for themselves. The first way that we see this happen is when Jane records a video letter to Charlotte, and Bing walks in, sees her recording, and they're super cute together. Lizzie adds this to her vlog episode and feels conflicted about it later, especially now that she's so solidly made her mind up that she likes Bing. If you feel weird about the idea of Bing being in these video diaries he doesn't know about, so does the show. Elizabeth feels really, really guilty about this violation of his privacy and his moment with Jane, and is considering taking it down when suddenly there's a knock at the door. Caroline is another incredibly fun character that they adapted in this. She's the first one that we meet who had already been portrayed in costume theater via Charlotte a few episodes earlier.
I believe I can guess your thoughts at this moment.
I should imagine not.
You are thinking how insupportable it would be to spend many evenings in such tedious company.
So uncivilized.
I disagree with you there.
Oh, do you now? Pray tell, what is it that makes you think well of any of these cretins?
I've been meditating on the very great pleasure which a pair of fine eyes in the face of a pretty woman can bestow.
And then he stared directly at Lizzie.
Yes, he did seem really fixated on her.
Point is, Caroline was seething.
She did seem really on edge.
Caroline has seen all of the videos. She knows what Lizzie is doing, and she encourages her to keep going.
We're friends. I want you to continue what you're doing.
You want me to continue video blogging?
Yes.
Not only that, but she pops up in a lot of episodes when Lizzie wants to talk about Darcy.
Are you talking about Darcy?
Who else?
Can I help?
Sure. Come on down.
Oh, it's Darcy, isn't it?
Oh, God, you'd think in a house this big I wouldn't keep running into him.
And she doesn't have the same kind of generous read that Jane has on their interactions. You can see the way she kind of spurs on these misreadings that Lizzie is having of what happened between her and Darcy.
Just last night, you were all playing a game.
Oh, weren't you reading?
I was trying to read. Little did I know I was setting myself up for more Darcy scrutiny. Caroline, Bing said that all the women here seem very together. How did Darcy respond? Was it A, I agree wholeheartedly, friend? B, I agree some women here seem accomplished, but on the whole neither more nor less so than anyone else? Or C, some women are considered together if they know how to tip a waiter and go to the gym twice a week?
C, definitely C.
That is correct!
The word is indeed applied too liberally. I cannot boast of knowing more than half a dozen women in all my acquaintance that are truly accomplished.
Nor I, to be sure. Goodness, you must comprehend a great deal in the idea.
I do.
Absolutely.
And what, in Darcy's estimation, are the requirements for being considered truly together? Please name all 5 in 10 seconds. Go!
She must have a thorough knowledge of music, singing, drawing, dancing, and the modern languages to deserve the word.
And of course, she must improve her mind by extensive reading.
I'm no longer surprised at your knowing only 6 accomplished women. I rather want to know you're knowing any.
Are you so severe on your own sex?
I never saw such a woman. She would certainly be a fearsome thing to behold.
You can tell she's up to something.
I know, this is Lizzie's video blog, but I'm just trying to encourage her to talk about last night's events.
I don't know, it was just not really worth talking about.
Lizzie, aren't these your diaries? A diary is a great sounding board to vent your frustrations.
And you can tell that Lizzie is just so thrilled to finally have somebody validate her blind anger and hatred towards Darcy that she doesn't notice that.
How do you feel about our dear Mr. Darcy?
Well, I dropped the dear prefix for starters, but he thinks he's perfect and has no faults.
Which you called him on.
Oh, yes, I did.
But you did point out his short temper.
Of course, he's a short temper. It goes along with his stuck-upness and unforgiving personality, which is no surprise.
His good opinion, once lost, is lost forever.
Caroline even tells Elizabeth herself that she knows that it would be bad if the guys were to discover her video blog. But even when Elizabeth shows signs of thinking that maybe what she's doing isn't right, Caroline encourages her again and again to keep going.
Yeah, so I came in and you two were chatting. What were you guys talking about anyway?
Well, he wasn't really talking. He was more neck deep in duties.
Yeah, it was really strange and honestly kind of rude.
Don't worry about that. Please continue.
She's very true to her book adaptation. Somebody of similarly prejudicial nature of Darcy. Somebody from that same sort of social class that he's already in, and somebody who considers herself to be a pretty easy match for Darcy in terms of what would be expected of them for their marriage. And somebody Darcy's not interested in.
How many letters you must have occasion to write, Mr. Darcy? Letters of business, too. How odious I should think them.
It is fortunate, then, that they fall to my lot instead of yours.
You're so dedicated to your business. I can't seem to focus when I'm out of the office.
Good thing you don't have my job, then.
Do tell your sister that I long to see her.
I've already told her once by your desire.
I do dote on her.
Are you writing an email to Gigi? Do you tell her I love her new Twitter? It's so cute what she did to the background.
I'll tell her to call you. I'm sure I couldn't do your enthusiasm justice.
I was quite in raptures at her beautiful little design for a table.
Perhaps you will give me leave to defer your raptures till I write again. At present, I have not room enough to do them justice.
So, it was really dull until you had me walk with you.
Miss Elizabeth, let us take a turn about the room.
To disrupt him. 2 lovely ladies taking a turn about the room, enticing any man, would it not?
Yeah, but he wouldn't join us even when you politely asked him to. Something about seeing through our deceptive motives.
You can only have 2 motives, Caroline, and I would interfere with either.
Deception? Whatever does that mean? What'd he say?
You're either walking together to banter about secrets or because you're aware that your aimless strolling around the room shows off your figures.
If the first, I should get in your way. If the second, I can admire you much better from here.
Shocking.
Shocking, was it not?
Well, it was kind of weird just walking around the room, but yeah!
Caroline is not a fan of the Bennet family. Pretty much everybody loves Jane. She's sweet, she's nice. She doesn't truly have a reason to be suspicious of Jane other than her family's social standing and also just Caroline's protectiveness over her brother. Protectiveness that makes her want to drive a wedge between Elizabeth and Darcy because she has a crush on Darcy and is noticing Darcy's crush on Elizabeth.
Oh, look, your little crush is coming this way. Are you fake texting?
It's super important.
But also between Jane and her brother. Unfortunately, Caroline isn't even the only one kind of putting her thumb on the scale as the relationship between Jane and Bing is unfolding. Not only does Darcy have a similar suspicion about what the Bennet family's motive might be in having Jane court his best friend, who he loves, someone who, and this might sound familiar, Darcy thinks is the embodiment of everything good that he doesn't see in himself. Bingley is sweet and charming and very good at parties and social situations, something that Darcy has already proven to us he does not excel in. At the same time as Caroline and Darcy are expressing these doubts that they have about Jane to Bing, Lizzie has been encouraging Jane to play it cool, not jump in too soon. Even though Jane deeply cares for Bing, it means that her actions come across as apathetic to him at times. This is what eventually leads to the dissolution of their relationship, but that is not until after we've left Netherfield. We take off from Netherfield after Jane has learned that the house their mother was having renovated has been completely livable for weeks, and we begin to unfold a bit more plot that has a little bit less to do with Jane's love life. This is why I saved the VidCon bit earlier. Alright, you ready to backtrack? So, between the party at Bing's house and their long stay at Netherfield, Lizzie and Jane and Lydia and Charlotte all attended VidCon. To me, I kind of was just like, oh, they're going to pretend like she's going to VidCon, that's fun. But it's actually, I keep saying this, really clever and smart narratively for the adaptation, and it's a fun way to take advantage of the YouTube-based content that they were making in the first place. While Elizabeth was talking about VidCon before she attended it, we saw, as we get to see with a lot of the things where Charlotte cuts in and interrupts, and we notice that they are thinking about things differently, that they had two very different intentions for what they were going to do at VidCon once they got there. Charlotte is her editor, and we know from other videos she's promoting all of the social media. It's called the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, but behind the scenes, at least at the beginning, the two of them think of themselves as a team. But we can pick up pretty quickly that Charlotte is more concerned with growing the channel than Lizzie is. Lizzie is really just seeing these as a confessional diary type thing.
And I think I found a quiet place to shoot, but the longer I'm out here in front of a camera, the more likely it is that some random person will just pop up into my video.
Lizzie Bennet!
Oh my god, what did I do?
You don't recognize me? Ricky? Please call me Mr. Collins.
Mister?
Well, due to my calculating choice of a career path, I've yet to achieve my doctorate degree. Thus, I'm still simply Mr. Collins. Although I can understand you'd expect a man possessing my high-level intelligence and impressive pedigree would surely have attained doctoral status at such a young age.
That is not what I meant.
Oh.
Mr. Collins is a character like Mrs. Bennet, who gets like more of kind of a grab bag of negative characteristics than they do a full working characterization to work with, which is why I find this performance so fun to watch every time he's on screen. Maxwell Glick plays Ricky Collins, or Mr. Collins, as he prefers to be referred to.
Mr. Collins, I prefer.
And I'd prefer to be really famous and get tons of free stuff. Deal.
And he's having so much fun the whole time. Like, everything about this, and I promise I mean this in, like, the highest praise, but everything about this performance gives me, like, 16-year-old theater kid playing the dad in a play at school. And it is so much fun to watch. He really leans into the characterization in the book of Mr. Collins, who is somebody who just talks a mile a minute, circling around what he means without actually having anything to say.
You may imagine, sir, how happy I am on every occasion to offer those little delicate compliments which are always acceptable to ladies.
It is fortunate for you, Mr. Collins, that you possess such an extraordinary talent for flattering with delicacy. May I ask whether these pleasing attentions proceed from the impulse of the moment, or are they the result of previous study?
I do sometimes amuse myself by writing down and arranging such little compliments as may be adapted to ordinary occasions. But I try to give them as unstudied an air as possible.
Excellent. Excellent.
In the book, Mr. Collins is a relative, but that doesn't matter because it's too far in the past for us to be weird about cousin incest. And he comes to visit because he wants to woo Elizabeth. He would like to marry her. This is something that her mom is totally on board with. Again, the whole financial issues reasoning here, as well as just wanting her daughter to be married. Elizabeth does not like Mr. Collins. She is less interested in this marriage than she is in almost anything else. He's not even a fun kind of adversary, the way that you can kind of tell that Darcy is fascinating her. Lizzie is just annoyed by Mr. Collins. Elizabeth is having a bad time, but I'm having a great one. As if Ricky wasn't already going to be annoying to her enough just by being somebody who she had gone to school with and didn't want to be interacting with at VidCon, it's made even worse by the fact that he is apparently attempting to get into the digital media landscape.
I recently managed to secure a substantial windfall from a most impressive venture capitalist firm.
So you're doing web video?
Oh, indeed. The VC is headed by a wealthy and influential woman, and I am plunging into the lush, progressive frontier of online video. Oh, this convention is a ripe harvesting ground, and I fully intend to further
Ricky,
all of my...
Mr. Collins, can we catch up later?
Any version of Elizabeth Bennet that's worth calling an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice will have a chip on her shoulder. So obviously Lizzie Bennet is no exception. She really does not take kindly to the fact that Ricky immediately attempts to give her advice. He wants her to start making instructional videos for internal use only at corporations. And this whole VidCon plotline, right? I mean, there's probably a million different ways that they could have done this that wouldn't have worked as well for me. This is one of those things where I start to realize that this is made not just by people who loved Pride and Prejudice, but by people who love YouTube. We, as the audience, have an understanding of why Elizabeth is turning down his offers. She tells us very clearly why she thinks that's bullshit, and he's being framed as an interloper. He got money from a venture capitalist, and he wants to come and exploit and monetize the hell out of what Lizzie sees as just simple, authentic YouTube videos. But we also see Charlotte's perspective.
You shouldn't have done that to Ricky.
He was being rude.
He wanted to catch up. Let's not burn any bridges. Okay, we can't insult people. Please be nice.
I am nice. Hey,
Charlotte has been working very hard on these videos, and she's already said that she was hoping it would lead to a career.
I thought it would be a good idea if we take all of those business cards from VidCon and the moderate success of these videos to try and see if we can get work that, oh, I don't know, pays.
I have already contacted people from VidCon and begun several dialogues which will hopefully lead to future opportunities.
Not Ricky Collins. Anybody who can get a big venture capitalist to invest in his web video company is pretty serious.
That doesn't
Well, he's also going to be in town.
Mr. Collins has been coming around every day this week. And when he's here, all he wants to do is mention his venture capitalist or talk about web video, a subject I'm not sure he actually knows anything about. Oh, but he has learned at least one thing since VidCon. My name is Lizzie Bennet. And guess who discovered my videos? So I'm not worried at all about people discovering my videos. Caroline's got my back with Bing, and as for Ricky, well, he's Ricky. Which is to say, he's a complete and total...
Lizzie?
What?
Elizabeth brushes Ricky off over and over again, and when Ricky insistently proposes over and over and over again that they be business partners in this version.
You're nervous, of course. My intentions have been too obvious. In fact, when I saw you again, I knew you would be the one.
You can't be serious.
To share the most important part of my life.
Oh my god.
Elizabeth Bennet, would you become my new business partner?
What?
Of course, you will have to abandon your studies. It is a great personal sacrifice, but I am willing to make it.
She says, no, no, no.
Oh, God, Ricky, you just don't get
Please,
it.
Mr. Collins.
No, I'm talking now. Me. Let me talk. Just shut up.
I love this whole show, as mentioned, but if I had to pick two favorite performances in it, I think that I would go with Mary-Kate Wiles as Lydia and Maxwell Glick as Ricky Collins. And thankfully, The show understands what kind of magic in a bottle they had with these two and let them play off of each other a bit, which is also very fun.
I don't think I understand.
Shut up.
But what are we...
Don't talk to me, I hate you.
I thought we were performing in costume theater.
Oh my god, you are literally the most infuriating human being on the planet, and if you speak another word to me, I will slap you so hard that you will fall back in time to before it was cool to like things before they were cool.
I'm not sure what I've done to upset you so vehemently, but you are very feisty.
That was me being Lizzie and your Darcy.
Oh, right. Yes, of course, that's fantastic. Okay. Oh, let me try.
Nope, next.
It takes a long time for Mr. Collins to take that no for an answer. And when he eventually does, he ends up talking to Charlotte about it.
Came to woo Miss Bennet and I was rejected. Though it is a rare occurrence, I accept this unfortunate result and I will return home.
Don't you still need a business partner?
She knows how to edit, she knows about the digital landscape, and even though she understands where Elizabeth's concerns are with what Ricky would want her to be making, she thinks that it would be worth it to get money, enough to survive on, enough to move out of her parents' house. Eventually, Charlotte, and not by right of being second best to Lizzie, but because she has all of this experience and knowledge and know-how, she gets this job that was being offered to Lizzie.
You're nervous, of course. My intentions have been too obvious. In fact, when I saw you again, I knew that you would be the one to share the most important
part of my life.
This is what I was talking about earlier when I said that I love what they adapted for Charlotte here. So instead of having her enter into a marriage of convenience with somebody who wanted to marry her best friend instead, Ricky is already engaged to somebody off screen. Nothing about this is a romantic subplot. Best way they could have done it in this case. I enjoy this moment too, where she insists that she be offered the same salary that Lizzie had been offered for the position. Charlotte is smart and she's capable, and it feels good to watch her make this decision even though Lizzie gets really, really upset with her about it.
Tell the viewers what happened.
I took Ricky's offer.
In the book and the movie, it's kind of just like, well, that's a bummer because Mr. Collins is annoying, but you don't have to be as sad that somebody has an annoying business partner and is making tons of money as you do that they have an annoying husband who they don't love and who doesn't love them, right? So Charlotte leaves. Elizabeth has a huge fight with her about it. She's really upset. She doesn't want the job, but she doesn't want Charlotte to take it either. She doesn't want Charlotte to leave. And she already feels like she's being left by Jane, who is further and further into her relationship with Bing at this point.
She's throwing away her education to play second fiddle to Ricky Collins, and I don't care if he's watching. He's an idiot and a moron, and Charlotte is free to make her own choices, but I'm free to have my own opinions, and Charlotte is making a stupid choice.
Charlotte leaves to go be Ricky Collins' business partner, and Lizzie continues to make the videos without her. She does have a distraction in the form of another character who I have neglected to introduce until right now.
My name is Lizzie Bennet. Do that one more time and I will kill you, George.
Did y'all know Pride and Prejudice is kind of a love triangle? I remember being surprised by that when this started to unfold. I don't know exactly what my preconceived notion of Pride and Prejudice was, but I was surprised to see another love interest introduced. Especially one who I hadn't previously heard of by name when the name Mr. Darcy was so familiar. Especially when he was introduced and he was so likable. I liked Wickham, and the fact that I liked Wickham is why I read the book. I knew that something was coming, I could see people talking about it in the comments, and I realized that as much as I was enjoying watching this play out, I wanted to be in on the story. I wanted to know what was happening. Mr. Wickham appears, and should appear in an adaptation, another reason why this is so well done, to be a nice, charming gentleman. Wickham is played by Wes Adderhold in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, and he is, rather than a soldier, a swim coach. The adaptation of all of these young soldiers in town as eligible bachelors to a bunch of swim teams being in town for a meet, brilliant. I love you. Lizzie Bennet Diaries, I am kissing you on the mouth. I think that's fun. I think it makes more sense as well for this character in the modern day when there are more career options for him not to be in the military. I just think that it's really well executed, and it's also an adaptation that is somehow both almost one-to-one in terms of soldiers coming to town versus people on swim teams all coming to town for a big meet, without feeling like it's trying really, really hard to justify itself. He's charming and flirtatious, and they banter back and forth.
When it comes to buckles, I'm lost.
Dear, oh dear. You must be the shame of the regiment.
What laughingstock?
What do your superiors do with you?
She gets a lot of what she gets out of her relationship with Darcy from this relationship with Wickham. Fundamentally, Elizabeth Bennet is a girl who needs somebody that she can banter with. Wickham has a good way of both kind of teasing her, but he's also self-effacing and charming, and I'm a lesbian. There's nothing other than just like pure aesthetic knowledge here, but Wes Adderhold is pretty. Wickham and Darcy have a bit of a history, and it's one that takes a while to unveil itself completely. Lizzie saw Wickham and Darcy have a little bit of a staring contest at the bar.
I'm sorry. I have to go.
See, not that dramatic.
Wickham has a story that he would love to tell, and it's one that Elizabeth believes. One that perfectly slots into her preconceived notions of who William Darcy is and why she hates him so much. Lizzie ends up inviting Wickham over in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries and asking him to tell her what happened on her video blog. He uses them to flirt with Lizzie when he features to tell a fictionalized, heavy air quotes there, version of what happened between Darvid and Batman.
One was called Darvid, and the other was called
Vin Diesel.
Vin Diesel?
Oh, no, The Rock. Oh, Batman.
And by leveraging the fact that he already watched the previous videos where she had talked about their budding relationship and thought it was cute to make her blush.
No, it's fine. It was sweet, even. I knew there was a reason I liked coming to this town for swim meets.
Again, I think Wes Adderhold is pretty. And I think he's pretty in, like, the exact jock way that you need to cast for this. Just wonderful piece of casting. Because Wickham's kind of a douchebag. And that's not a statement against the kind of pretty that Wes Adderhold is, but he has the kind of face where he can sell that. You know, like, he's acting as a pretty boy who's been told his whole life he's pretty. It carries. So true both in the book and in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries adaptation is that Wickham and Darcy were friends growing up.
Indeed, I've been connected with his family since infancy.
Wickham's father in the book was like the steward of the Darcys' estates because the Darcys are very, very wealthy. And when he passed, Mr. Darcy Sr. promised George Wickham that he would pay for his living. His intention at the time was some sort of career in the church, and after Mr. Darcy Sr. died, it came to Darcy, the Darcy we know, to be the one to distribute or not the money that his father had. Now, as Wickham tells the story, he never received this money. I like this adaptation here, too, where it seems to be that the deal was a tuition payment. That also makes sense for Wickham being a swim coach. You know, it kind of makes you think, okay, he didn't get the money he was going to get from Darcy's father. He had to put himself through school anyway, but it seems not to have been the school that he initially wanted to go to. He holds this against Darcy. He thinks that Darcy is very disagreeable, and he plays like 2% shy before he just spills the beans and tells Elizabeth this story that he knows, especially in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, after having watched her previous episodes, will definitely sour her opinion on Darcy.
I do not trust myself on that subject.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's just... I saw the look between you two at Carter's, and I didn't even know you knew each other.
Yeah, we grew up together.
Really? Okay, not prying, but, what happened?
It's not that I don't want to tell you. I don't want to sully any names.
You are a disturbingly good person, but, I guess I understand.
Although...
This is another thing that's just fun about Pride and Prejudice. Like I said before, the characters are all very dynamic. And this contrast between Wickham's perspective of the events and Darcy's interpretation of what actually happened is, again, a really fun thing to play into the subjectivity of with Lizzie's weblog. The thing about Wickham, though, is that he's full of shit. Like, 100% he's full of shit. He's lying. Wickham asked Darcy for the money after Darcy's father died, and Darcy gave it to him. And then he spent it. And in the book, after his initial plan at being a churchman fell through and he had squandered that money, he came back to Darcy. He said, "Hey man, I changed my mind. I spent that money. I want to study the law now, though. Can you help me out with that?" And Darcy was like, "Okay, I can't believe you spent all of the money that my father left you already, but sure, go to law school." Rather than going to law school with the second amount of money that he was given, he squandered that as well. That's why he's a soldier by the time that he meets Elizabeth. He doesn't have another option if he wants to pay for his boarding and his living. Adapting that into being a swim coach, I think, is really smart and clever. Obviously, it's not a one-to-one, but it's close enough that it maintains so much of this original character's choices. And again, just makes more sense than for him to be the kind of guy who would willingly go through boot camp. This George Wickham would not do that. Lizzie and George are flirting, and also so are Lydia and George. I wonder if that'll turn into anything. One of the best things that happens with Wickham, though, is not during his relationship with Lizzie. So we're gonna wait and talk about him a little bit more later when he comes back up. So now we're officially caught up to where I was as a teenager when I decided to take a break from watching the show, read the book, and see what happened. Charlotte is gone at this point, and this is one of the times, along with earlier during this stay at Netherfield, when a side character's blog starts posting more frequently. She is now teaching her younger sister how to record videos, hoping that she'll impress Mr. Collins by the end of her internship and be offered a permanent job like her sister was. There are a few things that are fun about this, although I'm not sure that the person who wrote the character's monologue about the, at the time, new season of Doctor Who had actually seen it and not just kind of pulled in a bunch of titles from text posts that they had seen on Tumblr at the time.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Okay. Dinosaurs on a spaceship. A spaceship. And the girl. The Dalek. Who is she? What is she? And Amy, I don't want her to leave. She can't. She can't leave, okay? And she... And oh, it better be awesome, okay? And Rory, whatever happened? What happened? Like, and they were just so... I mean... See? I told you could do this.
But there's also differences in production quality. The audio sounds immediately different than the one on the camera that Lizzie has been filming on with Charlotte. It looks like it was filmed on a webcam. I'm not sure if they actually did film it on a webcam or not. I'm thinking maybe not. It looks really nice still. But I really like those little attention to production details. Again, a show made by people who love YouTube. Charlotte and her sister put out a few different videos about her sister learning how to vlog. It's both fun and cute, and also Charlotte missing Lizzie, which is a nice thing to see, even though they did leave on poor terms with each other and are not currently talking. In a parallel to the carefree young Lydia in the book inviting Wickham to Darcy's friend Bing's ball without understanding that you're not allowed to invite people to other people's balls.
Be sure to invite Mr. Wickham. He is a credit to his profession. Lydia, you can't invite people to other people's balls.
Lizzie insists that George Wickham should be her +1 when she is invited to Bing's birthday party. She and Darcy have a very awkward dance mirroring their earlier dance-based interactions, and during this one, Darcy again thanks her for the dance. Something I think is cute is how many little hints we get, even within all of Lizzie's defensiveness, that Darcy likes her.
I was actually trying to be really nice to you.
She tells him to play nice whenever Wickham inevitably shows up, because the two of them have a history, and Darcy informs her that there's no way Wickham will be showing up. Wickham had previously been very insistent that it wouldn't be a problem for him to show up at that ball, that if Darcy had an issue with him being there, Darcy is the one who should leave. But then Elizabeth gets stood up, and Darcy is pretty much taking credit for it, saying there's no way Wickham is showing his face here. She already is doubling down on how much she hates this guy. She thinks that he's now sabotaging her relationship with Wickham, who she likes. This all plays out really, really consistently with its source material, because the next day, Jane attempts to go and visit Bing's house because she didn't get a chance to talk to him much, that they haven't been seeing each other lately. Jane goes to visit Bing and finds that his house is empty, and when she comes back to tell Lizzie about that, she gets a Twitter notification.
Oh, that's his Twitter.
He's tweeting about being in the big city and that small towns are great, but it's good to be back. Jane had no idea that he was leaving or how long he intends to be gone for. This also happens in the book. This is a fun adaptation to watch play out, especially the Twitter notifications versus Jane in the book having much slower access to knowing that Bing has just ghosted her. Jane is completely heartbroken over this development with Bing.
Jane. You just left and you didn't say anything except that you were going to be in Los Angeles for a while. And I don't know what you're thinking, and I don't know what I did, and I don't know why you won't have just like a real conversation with me.
Oh, hey, honey, hey, no, oh, it's gonna be okay. Everything's okay.
So much of the real estate in my brain when I think about how much I love this series is taken up by Lydia and this version of Lizzie and Darcy that I forgot until I rewatched it just how much I love this portrayal of Jane. Out of all of the characters in Pride and Prejudice, I've always found the dynamic between Jane and Bing to be sort of the least interesting one. Not that I dislike it, but they are a simple, easy match for each other, and despite the miscommunications that separate them, it's pretty easy for them to find their way back together. That inevitability doesn't make it any easier to watch this heartbreak that Jane is going through, though, and you really feel it with this portrayal from this actress who has been so happy-go-lucky so far. Lizzie suggests that she and Jane go and demand an explanation. Jane promises to think about this and then comes back in a few minutes later and says, actually, I've already been thinking about moving and I'm going to move for work anyway. She seems to be hoping that she might coincidentally run into him in the city, but by the time we see her again, she seems to have moved on. She gets a chance to pursue her own passions in fashion and build a life for herself in the city, during which Caroline ignores her attempts to get into contact and she doesn't happen to run into Bing. The two of them are not immediately reunited. In the book, they're reunited the next time that Lizzie and Darcy see each other, but the show takes its time with this so that Jane has time to go through an arc. I think it's really good writing. Another thing I love about this adaptation of George Wickham to a swim coach is that they are able to have him quickly leave town for work without needing to deploy him in the army, which would be hard to bring him back from as often as he is. Instead, he leaves to go coach a swim team in another city and is much more casual about things with Lizzie than she had been. We know that she is upset by this development, but she forces herself to get over it, especially in the face of this heartbreak that Jane is going through. Lydia makes an attempt at comforting Lizzie and is brushed off the way she very often is when she tries to get Lizzie's attention. The Collins and Collins saga ends with Charlotte logging into Maria's account and uploading a letter of recommendation she made, after having supervised her in the position over the summer. Maria doesn't want to stay on full-time at Collins and Collins, but this is a sweet little moment between the two of them. Charlotte doesn't get a lot of screen time, but she does clearly have a lot going on. She's well thought out and well portrayed in a way that's really good and, again, kind of contrary to the book. Maria convinces Charlotte to watch the videos that Lizzie had been making, and Lizzie had been saying in those videos how much she missed her best friend. Charlotte wasn't aware that she was even missed and calls her friend. The two of them eventually patch up their relationship enough for Elizabeth to come visit the Collins and Collins headquarters in Florida. At Collins and Collins, we get to learn more about the venture capitalist that Ricky Collins has been shamelessly name-dropping every time he's been on screen.
Oh, that is exceedingly savvy of you. My VC partner, Catherine de Bourgh, always says. So you've observed how Miss Catherine de Bourgh was very generous with her resources utilized to furnish this glorious sanctuary. Oh, and speaking of Miss de Bourgh...
Catherine is Darcy's aunt. Neither Charlotte or Lizzie knew about this until they were already having dinner with Miss de Bourgh. Miss de Bourgh is very critical of Lizzie, and in the book, it's because she wants Darcy to marry her daughter. Yes, even though Darcy is her nephew. But they have avoided that by turning her daughter into a spoiled dog that Lizzie portrays with a little stuffed animal. Darcy comes to visit his aunt during Lizzie's visit to Collins and Collins. He's been asked to look in on the finances of the company, and he brings along his friend Fitz. Fitz is really fun to watch. I think he's great. He's a breath of fresh air, and he serves the exact same purpose that he does in the book. He's somebody who continues to add to this long list of people that Lizzie doesn't understand why they would willingly associate with and quite like William Darcy. So Fitzwilliam immediately guesses that Lizzie has a vlog and is super excited. He wants to be on it, and she says yes, but you can't watch any of the previous episodes, which he agrees to. And while Fitz is trying to talk Darcy up to Elizabeth, in the midst of a few awkward encounters that they have while they're both at Collins and Collins.
You know who's all about the love?
You.
Yes, but aside from me, begins with a D, ends with an RC.
Excuse me?
I know that your impression of him isn't the greatest, but he's a loyal and loving dude.
He makes a big mistake. Huge.
For example, last month, he warned a friend about a girl he was seeing. He pulled him away from the whole situation. You know, he warned him that it was unhealthy. She was bad news.
Who was the friend?
Bingley. He's a really super cool dude. You should meet him.
This is so close to being exactly what happens in the book. In an attempt to talk up what a loving and caring guy Darcy is to the people around them, Fitz accidentally says the only thing that could possibly make Lizzie hate Darcy more. Darcy recently saved his friend from being in a relationship with a woman who didn't have pure intentions.
Dodge that bullet. I told you, he really cares for the people he loves.
That's the version of the story that Darcy and Caroline believe happened. That's the version of the story that Fitz believes happened. And Fitz doesn't know that the girl's name was Jane.
What's your sister's name again?
Jane.
Cheer up, Jane. It gets better.
Or that Jane is Lizzie's sister. Getting to see Lizzie realize something after the fact and getting to not even see the person who tells her that realize what they've told her. Very fun. This confirmation of Darcy's feelings about her family is really what just sends Lizzie absolutely spiraling. She already knew that she thought that Darcy was a stuck-up snob, but she didn't know yet that she could also hate him for ruining her sister's happiness. Lizzie is in the middle of one of her absolute angriest, most wound-up diatribes against Darcy yet when it finally happens. Darcy knocks on the door. We don't see his face yet. We don't get to. We don't need to. We've been waiting. At the time of this coming out, we had to wait another 3 days. Not just that, but 3 days while other channels were uploading. You would get Lizzie Bennet content and it wouldn't even be Darcy's face. We weren't sure if we would see him in the next episode.
I've been hiding something from you that I shouldn't have and that I can't anymore. I need to admit something to you.
In vain I have struggled. It will not do. My feelings will not be repressed.
2 parts of me have been at war. Your odd family, your financial troubles, you're in a different world from me. People expect me to travel in certain circles, and I do respect the wishes of my family, but not today. I've been fighting against this for months now, but Lizzie Bennet, I'm in love with you.
You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you.
Darcy is kind of annoyed with himself.
In declaring myself thus, I am fully aware that I will be going expressly against the wishes of my family, my friends, and I hardly need add my own better judgment.
I can't believe it either, that my heart could completely overwhelm my judgment.
I hope that your judgment can be some solace in your rejection, because those feelings are not mutual.
So much of this is straight from the book, especially with the stilted manner that William talks in.
And what about Mr. Wickham?
What about him?
What imaginary act of friendship caused you to do what you did to him?
How can you defend yourself on that subject?
You take an eager interest in that gentleman's concerns.
You seem unnervingly interested in his concerns.
He told me of his struggles.
Oh, yeah, his life has been quite a struggle.
His misfortunes, yes, his misfortunes have been great indeed.
Oh, yes, his misfortunes have been very great indeed.
You ruin his chances and yet you treat him with sarcasm.
You destroy his life and then make jokes about it.
And this is your opinion of me?
So this is your opinion of me?
So this is what you think of me?
He gets a bit looser in the role as he continues, which I think is both a result of the actor portraying him being a bit more comfortable in the skin of this character, and also because Darcy in his later appearances is on his own ground, which is something we'll get to in a bit. This is always a surprise to Elizabeth. In any adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, William Darcy's first confession of love has to come out of nowhere. Darcy's big speech in the book boils down to, I have been struggling against this. I hate that I feel this way. I should not feel this way because of these reasons. I do still love you though, so maybe we should get married.
May I ask why you're even here in spite of your social class, the wishes of your family, and your own better judgment?
That was badly put. But that's the world we live in. You can't deny it. Social classes are a real thing. People who think otherwise live in a fantasy.
And that's just the beginning of a long list of reasons why I'm rejecting you.
Such as?
Might I ask why with so little endeavour at civility I am thus repulsed?
And I might as well inquire why, with so evident a design of insulting me, you chose to tell me that you like me against your better judgment.
No, believe me, I
if
didn't
I
mean...
was uncivil, then that is some excuse, but I have other reasons. You know I have.
What reasons?
Such as, the nicest thing you've ever said about me was that I was decent enough. You act like you'd rather have a hernia repaired than be around me. You have a checklist for what makes an accomplished woman, and don't even get me started on what you did to Jane.
What about Jane?
You took the heart of my sister, the kindest soul on the planet, and tore it in half.
How could you do it?
Because I believed your sister indifferent to him.
Indifferent?
I watched them most carefully and realised his attachment was deeper than hers.
That's because she's shy.
Bingley, too, is modest and was persuaded she didn't feel strongly
Because
for him.
you suggested it.
I did it for his own good.
My sister hardly shows her true feelings to me.
And
I didn't mean...
Why did you do it, Darcy? Does causing pain to those of us of a lower social standing give you joy?
No. I simply doubted her long-term faith in the relationship. From that point on, I never believed that her feelings for him were any more than simply her kindness. I was protecting him.
Protecting him or protecting his wealth?
I suppose you suspect that his fortune had some
No,
bearing
I
on
wouldn't
the
do your
matter.
sister the dishonour, though it was suggested.
What was?
Did you really think Jane was dating Bing for the money?
Well, it was made pretty clear to me that this would be an advantageous relationship for her.
By Jane?
No, but by her family, your family.
It was made perfectly clear that an advantageous marriage...
Did my sister give that impression?
No, there was, however, I have to admit, the matter of your family.
A want of connection. Mr. Bingley didn't seem to vex
No, it was
himself
more
about
than
that.
that.
How, sir?
It was the lack of propriety shown by your mother, your 3 younger sisters, even on occasion your father.
My family?
Your energetic younger sister, and especially your mother. Every discussion, every moment I observed her, she would blabber about Jane and Bing and defined and consumed her life. I'm sorry. I never thought of you that way.
Forgive me. You and your sister, I must exclude.
All of these opinions that she's been giving to us as her audience are given to him not just in this speech that she gives him while she's yelling at him, but when she tells him to go watch her videos.
I'm sorry to have caused you so much pain. I should have acted differently. I was unaware of your feelings towards me.
You were unaware? Then why don't you watch my videos?
She immediately regrets this, but does not take it back. She's way too stubborn to do that. And Darcy, if he's gonna do one thing, he's gonna do what Elizabeth asks him to.
You're filming again.
Yes.
You're quite prolific.
You watched my videos.
It was illuminating. You called me a robot. And a newsie.
Darcy watches all of the videos in one night. Some things that are fun to imagine him watching during that time. Not just Lizzie mocking him for wearing the page boy hat and the bow tie, and calling him a robot and saying that he is dooming himself to living alone forever.
Okay.
Oh, of course, Peach. I'll see you in a few weeks.
And also the confirmation that Darcy has done something bad by meddling in Jane and Bing's romance, because Jane was clearly truly in love with Bing. However, even when Lizzie confronts him about this, true both in the book and the show, he says, well, Bing clearly didn't feel as strongly as Jane did then, because why did Bing let me talk him out of it? This doesn't do a lot or anything to make Lizzie less angry. Jane is on that same page. She already decided when she didn't hear from him after moving to the city that she was going to move on with her life. Darcy returns the next day for an awkward and sort of failed apology. And he gives her a letter that explains his side of the story, everything with Wickham that I told you earlier.
I sometimes have difficulty explaining myself. Just read it. Please.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry if I made your visit here awkward or unpleasant in any way.
Lizzie doesn't read this letter on camera the way that she does a lot of other pieces of content. It gets teased out through a few different videos, and Caroline even comes to Collins and Collins after Darcy has quietly left to try to investigate what's going on. She tries again to manipulate Lizzie, playing dumb that she hasn't been watching the videos, even though she obviously has because she's come to see what was in the letter. Caroline isn't able to do damage control with Lizzie and get back into her good graces.
How dare you accuse me of not wanting my brother to be happy? He is my blood. I would do anything for the preservation of my family.
And what about my family? You basically admitted to having driven away your brother from my sister.
I admitted to no such thing. Rewatch the videos, you'll see. But speaking of family, let's talk about yours for a second, Lizzie Bennet. Aside from your crippling family-wide debt, your mother is inconsiderate and belligerent. Your youngest sister is an embarrassment to everyone and clearly never thinks before she speaks. And Jane, she is going nowhere fast in her career, and yes, one must wonder if she had ulterior financially based motives in seducing my brother.
And they have a fight, but Lizzie doesn't do much defending of Lydia. Lizzie hasn't done much of a lot of defending Lydia at pretty much any point in this series. She's upset with what Darcy has to say about her family, but she's really upset because it rings so close to her own perceptions of her sister. Her sister who she has been very judgmental towards up until now. We'll be talking about Lydia and Wickham's relationship more later, but I want to talk about Lydia herself first. Like I said before, this is my favorite thing that this adaptation does. It does it masterfully and respectfully and in a way that feels a little bit too wrenching to watch at sometimes. Most of Mary-Kate Wiles' performance as Lydia is this fun, giddy, upbeat, giggly girl. This is very true to her characterization in the movie and the book, but this time it actually has something behind it, and she's not allowed to have anything behind any of that in any other adaptation I'm aware of. Lydia is characterized as a party girl. This show feels a little bit like it might have been written by a younger sibling, and I mean that in a positive way. I'm the youngest by about 7 years, and watching a lot of these interactions with Lydia at the time as a teenager and also now as an adult really reminds me of what it felt like to be the younger sister with that much of a difference between me and my closest siblings. We can see over and over again, I mean, even just by how often Lydia is barging into the videos.
What up, sis? Hey, are you okay? I heard yelling and General Lizzie's freaking out over something ridiculous noises.
Just contemplating the loss of my beloved sister to her 2.5 adorable babies and macrobiotic sister-in-law.
Well, you'll always still have me, right?
Oh, lucky me. I get to keep the boy-crazy, completely irresponsible substance abuser.
Yeah. Anyway.
She wants to be around her sister. She really likes Lizzie. She really wants Lizzie's attention. She doesn't have the best way of going about that, and everything about her seems to play into the preconceived notions that Lizzie is already building in her mind.
You're gonna love it. Hold out your hand. You left it in Caroline's bathroom.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, Lizzie Bennet.
What have you done with my baby sister?
I love you, sis.
I remember watching this as it played out and feeling so sad when I saw some of these expressions that Lydia will have when she's trying to be sweet to her sister and she gets shut down. Or hearing Elizabeth say things like, Lydia's being a stupid, hoary slut again. Made me sad when I was watching it, especially before I knew that this is so clearly part of who Elizabeth is. She has these judgments of people. She holds herself in completely different categories from other people. But the show is really aware of how mean it's being to Lydia.
From As Easy Ash on YouTube. Lydia is excitable, inexperienced, and easily led astray. That to me says party girl more than slut. Lizzie, your college education is making you a tad judgmental or preparing you for a career on Fox. Whoa! Listen, I'm not opposed to responsible, smart, safe women doing whatever they like in the bedroom with whomever they like. I just hope that Lydia becomes one of those women soon.
I don't know, something about just straightforwardly acknowledging like that your main character is bullying her baby sister goes a long way to me. This is one of those things I was referencing earlier too when I said that this is a show that's very aware of its main character's flaws. Mary-Kate Wiles put a lot into this performance of Lydia. Again, this is one of my favorite performances on a show where I like a lot of the things that the actors were doing. Mary-Kate Wiles in specific, though, I feel really understood the vision of what was happening with Lydia here, and that's not something that's present in the movies or in the book. And all the time that this show takes from the very beginning, the very introduction of Lydia, to introduce her dynamic with her sisters. Jane and Elizabeth are very close in age. They're very close in general. They call each other their best friends. They don't refer to Lydia that way. Jane is sweet to Lydia the way she's sweet to everyone else, but she's not protective over her in a way that does much to protect her from the way Lizzie talks to or about her. The times we see Lydia get defended are mostly when she insists on it herself.
I heard that! My sister Lydia is not a slut. Happy?
Yes.
This isn't a girl who is being well observed or taken care of. She's on a very long leash. Her mother is too preoccupied with making sure that the older two daughters are getting married, and her other two sisters are preoccupied with each other and their own lives. Lizzie, presumably already used to Lydia having a fake ID, very nearly forgets Lydia's 21st birthday and is very put out about the party that Lydia throws for herself. We finally see Mary for the first time outside of Lydia's videos earlier, and she and Lizzie portray her earlier interaction with Wickham when Lizzie told Wickham that he was absolutely not to come to Lydia's party.
Sounds like I have some catching up to do. But you can get me all caught up tonight at your sister's party.
You were not invited.
Well, no, but I know some of the volleyball guys.
No! You're not invited! You can't come tonight!
You said I interrupt you there. That was pretty good, right? That was great. Great job, Mary.
This is some of the first hint that we get that Lizzie is changing her mind about Darcy. She took that letter very seriously. She and Charlotte even found a way to go about sharing the contents and what that meant for the story that they had previously told without feeling like they were betraying Darcy's confidence, something that Darcy later confirms that he has no problem with. Lydia doesn't get a birthday present from Lizzie until 3 days after her birthday. She gets a pretty sparkly necklace that she immediately loves that's a joint gift from both Jane and Lizzie.
Thank you, Lizzie! Thank you, Jane! Look! I miss you!
And then Lizzie says she has a gift that's just from her.
Where did I park my car? A Party Girl's Guide to Becoming a Successful Adult.
Lydia's hurt at this is obvious, and she even tries to give Lizzie the out of saying you're so good at joke gifts.
It's not a joke gift.
Oh.
But Lizzie digs her heels in. This scene is difficult to watch. A lot of the things we're about to be getting to with Lydia are difficult for me to watch. It's no surprise when this attention that she's getting from George Wickham ends up being something that fascinates and compels her. Lydia is begging for connection from her sisters, and she's shut down at every opportunity. She's mocked. She's isolated. In walks George Wickham.
Weirdly, a lot of you guys guessed I was going to be hanging out with Wix, and you seem totally judgy about it, but you need to chill because I can hang out with whoever I want, whenever I want.
Nah, they were probably just looking out for you. Lizzie and Darcy said some pretty awful things about me, so I'm sure they didn't want you getting mixed up with bad company.
There's a few years difference here. There's a power difference here. There's a maturity difference here. And we know George Wickham is full of shit. Lydia doesn't know that. I'm not sure Lydia even really cares. We've watched her spend this entire series desperate for somebody to be nice to her, and then this guy is. And he takes advantage of her. He exploits her trust. So what in the book was a marriage that even once the financial issues were resolved down the road, Lydia was permanently stuck in, gets changed to a grooming relationship with an older man who had been dating her sister. I'm really fascinated by the way that Lydia is portrayed in all of this. She gets to be the victim that she is. She gets to be somebody that we feel sorry for. She gets to be somebody that we are endeared by. She gets to be the innocent one in this situation without needing to be an innocent person, full stop. She doesn't need to be being misinterpreted. She's being taken advantage of. That's enough. I love the choices that were made here. To let her be a party girl, to let her be wild and get drunk and have fun, and to also examine the ways that those are happening because she's not happy, and to examine the ways that those turn her into the victim for somebody who's going to come do Mr. Wickham things to her. That is so hard to pull off, and I would imagine even harder when your entire thing is that you're fucking adorable. Mary-Kate Wiles is like a personified sunbeam, especially when she's acting as Lydia and she's being giddy and giggly and upbeat. Watching her be beat down by this, watching this get to her, and watching her sisters realize what has happened to her while they weren't paying attention to her is just so compelling and well executed. It is wild that this just lives inside of a YouTube series that people made and put on the internet for free. This is really, really good performance. And this is really, really good writing. Okay, remember earlier when I was saying that despite the fact that this cast is fairly large, it doesn't end up feeling very bloated by the time you get to the end of the story? The reason that I wanted to wait and introduce you to people as they are unfolded in the plot rather than giving you a list of everybody and their motivations up front is because the list of characters is a lot more understandable once you have kind of their natural contrasts and pairings with them. This is credit for good writing that goes in part to Jane Austen when she wrote the original novel, and in part to the people who adapted it the way that they did. Jane Austen was very aware of how to make use of the literary technique that we know as foiling. A narrative foil is just a character who contrasts with another character. Generally, it'll be the protagonist versus the antagonist. Sometimes love interests can foil each other, which we see in Pride and Prejudice quite a bit. Jane and Bing do not foil each other. Foiling is a process not just in literature, but in jewelry making as well, which is how it gets its name. A gem or stone appears brighter when you put something behind it to contrast it. Jane and Bing are not foils of each other. Their motivations are too similar. They are both too much of the same stuff to have that kind of comparative nature between them, bringing out anything special about each other. It's their similarities that make them a good fit and why they're paired up together in the book. This book is full of foils, though, if you look pretty much anywhere other than Jane and Bing. Because Jane and Bing don't foil each other, but they do foil other people in the book, right? Like I said earlier, Jane and Bing both foil a less open-minded and good-hearted nature that Lizzie and Darcy have. Lady Catherine de Bourgh, who is very hard on Lizzie and doesn't come around and change her mind, foils Lizzie's initial hard-heartedness when it comes to changing her opinion of Darcy. The final character that I'm going to be introducing you to today is my favorite foil in the book, and especially in how she's portrayed in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. And coming off of talking about Lydia for a moment feels like a good time to introduce Gigi. It takes a while for us to meet her, but we are introduced to her in theory earlier. Actually, during that whole accomplished woman situation, part of Caroline knowing what to say when she's trying to flirt with Darcy, that Gigi is Darcy's idea of what an accomplished woman is. We see some of that as well in the dinner I mentioned earlier with Fitz and Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
How's your sister Georgiana getting on?
Quite well. She's now nationally ranked in tennis.
Oh, splendid, splendid. It was so unfortunate when she gave up swimming.
It's for the best. She wished to focus her accomplishments.
So we know very little about Gigi before we meet her. We know Darcy thinks highly of her, and we know at some point she gave up swimming. That's pretty much all we know about Gigi prior to meeting her. Darcy thinks very highly of her, is protective of her, and she gave up swimming at some point, but she used to really love it. I'm not exaggerating when I say that the way that each of these pieces of information plays out is masterful. We have not had a very good opportunity to get to know Darcy yet, right? We saw him for a second when he came back and tried to confess his love to Elizabeth. We saw him admit that he's not the best in social situations by asking her to read a letter rather than try to have something off the cuff that clearly has not been working for him so far. And we saw him leave in an attempt to not make Lizzie feel uncomfortable. This is another thing that is important in an adaptation of Darcy. Darcy has to be very willing to accept the criticisms that Lizzie made of him and make changes to himself and his behavior based upon those, but he can't make the next move. That has to be on Elizabeth's terms. A clever explanation that this adaptation found for a bunch of semi-random visits that Lizzie makes around, including that visit to Collins and Collins earlier, is that she changed her final semester to an independent work-study program. She had been planning on doing her independent study at home, but with some encouragement from Jane to leave the nest, she goes ahead and takes an opportunity that's given to her to study at a corporation that sounds vaguely familiar to her called Pemberly Digital. The reason it sounds familiar is because Pemberly in the book is the name of Darcy's mansion. And because she presumably would have heard it somewhere when he was insisting on working while she was staying with Caroline and Bing. Her tour leader is Darcy's sister, who is super sweet and friendly and who makes quick friends with Lizzie despite her initial misgivings about her. Gigi has seen all of the videos and thinks that they're very funny.
But I think they're really great and hilarious.
Hilarious?
Yeah, well, I mean, the way you portray Darcy, that is, it's in your videos, it's just a completely different person than the one we here know.
So Darcy is well liked then?
Of course.
She's clearly very aware of Darcy's unrequited thing for Elizabeth.
So you know about my relationship with your CEO, William Darcy?
Or your lack of one. Seriously though, don't worry about it.
And she orchestrates an on-camera interaction between the two of them, which is both somehow believable as a younger sister pushing her older brother against her crush, and also a really good reason for this interaction to happen on camera when it wouldn't otherwise. We get to see the beginnings of what's genuinely an adorable thaw between the two of them here.
I didn't mean to surprise you.
I'm here
for
shadowing your
board
company.
meeting. I was aware you're shadowing Pemberly. I hope you've enjoyed your stay.
Yes. This place is amazing. Everyone has been incredibly kind.
Even my sister?
Yes. In her own special way.
I'm glad.
Anyway, I have to go.
So soon?
I'm having dinner down by the marina.
May I offer you a ride?
Oh, that's all right. I can walk.
The hills in this city can be quite unforgiving.
I've heard, but I like to see the city.
Understood.
Another one of my favorite parts of this thaw between Lizzie and Darcy comes after Lizzie has gotten a chance to kind of observe the sort of weak will that Bing has that let him make his friends make his decisions about his love life for him. While she's looking around for somebody to help her with her video, she happens to run into Darcy, and he genuinely asks if he can help her. And he fully gets what she's going for with the entire theory behind her gimmick.
There's this theory about levels of mediation in media that says it's possible for artificiality to both remind the audience that what they're seeing is a construction while at the same time adding to their level of immersion. I thought... Forget it, it's stupid.
You thought that costume theater, as ourselves, would remind the audience that this isn't a conversation we would naturally have, but because of that, the obviously constructed nature of the scene would, by its very artificiality, create its own sense of verisimilitude.
He's more than game to play along, and it's really sweet to watch.
So you'll do it?
Just a moment. Excuse me.
He excuses himself and comes back in his closest approximation of her costume. It's really cute and sweet, and it really points to a Darcy who has taken seriously her critiques of how seriously he takes himself. When they talk about Jane and Bing this time, Darcy expresses regret for meddling, but worries that if Jane wouldn't take Bing back, he'll just cause more pain for both of them by interfering again.
If Bing were to learn the true nature of Jane's feelings and seek her out, do you think she would take him back?
I'm honestly not sure.
then perhaps more meddling, even with the best of intentions, would only cause them both more pain.
Do you think Bing still cares about Jane?
I think you should ask him. How was that? Was that all right?
Yes. Thank you. Very helpful.
Gigi doesn't just foil Lydia in her lightheartedness and her excitement to be involved in Lizzie's videos and get on camera and orchestrate things for us as the audience. Once we already know Gigi as somebody sweet and smart and accomplished and who people are protective over, we see her in another light, as another victim of George Wickham. Her story begins the same way that the story that both Wickham and Darcy tell does. Wickham and Darcy were friends. There is an age difference between Gigi and Darcy, and therefore between Gigi and Wickham, and she had a younger sister crush on her brother's friend. After he had already gotten and wasted the money from Darcy, he came back and exploited her for her money. There are a lot of little things in this performance and this writing where you can tell that Gigi has been in therapy and that informs the way that she speaks.
Anyway, I was away at college. One day I ran into him, totally random, or so I thought at the time, but I was trying to make the swim team. He needed work, so he offered to coach me. We spent hours in the pool together.
But you didn't tell your brother about it because you knew he would stop it?
I mean, I suspected. I wanted something that was mine. Maybe even something that William disapproved of, but I don't know. I knew it was a bad idea. And he said he needed me. No one's ever needed me before, you know? I can understand that. I'm sorry. Anyway, I made the team, and I let him. He moved in with me.
That this is something that she has been spending a lot of time healing from. And that she needed to spend a lot of time healing from because it was very, very damaging to her.
I had this speech that I planned, daydreaming the turns of phrase that I would use to convince William that George really loved me and that everything was going to be all right. And of everything, it's that naive, stupid little sermon that most embarrasses me because, well, William said George was using me to get back at him and for the money, and I refused to believe him, so William proved it.
He proved it?
He got out his checkbook and wrote a check and held it in front of George's face.
And George took it.
And George took it. He looked at me, winked, and said, "Sorry, Peach." And then was gone.
Another thing that I wanted to show earlier and felt like a little bit of a drag, but now hurts.
Oh, thanks, Peach.
Let me help you with that.
Nothing you've said about my brother in your videos even comes close to what I've said about him to his face.
Really?
I get it. William is infuriating, but after a while I realized he was right. Of course he was, and in the end I am really grateful for what he did. He really takes care of the people he cares about.
I've heard.
Anyway, thank you, Lizzie. Please let me know when you post this and don't edit anything out. Except for maybe a little bit of the crying.
Sure thing.
We have to think that some of Gigi's urgency here to share what happened between her and Wickham has to do with what is playing out concurrently with Lizzie's visit to Pemberley on her sister Lydia's channel. But Lizzie isn't even currently watching those videos after the fight that she and Lydia had before Lydia went off for New Year's. So Lydia's channel has 25 videos on it total. She would pop in and out based on what was happening on the main channel. For example, earlier she stayed with her cousin Mary while her sisters were at Netherfield, and we got to see what was going on during that time. We saw her run off and go visit Jane after Jane moved to San Francisco and worry her mother by not saying where she was going. And we saw her learn and be kind of heartbroken to learn after she came back that her mother began to pay her cousin Mary to tutor her when she thought that they had been friends who were hanging out. Lydia's videos picked back up after she went to Vegas and met back up with Wickham, but Lizzie hadn't been watching them ever since they had a fight about one that she posted right before she left. Lydia's blogs are filmed on her phone and have a much more DIY feel to them, and the more and more often that Wickham is around, we see that he's the one turning them on. He's the one controlling what she's talking about in them. She's addressing her viewers less and less, and instead going along with what he is sort of directing her towards. And these videos that he's directing her in are deeply, deeply unsettling to watch. Lydia's makeup and colors in her wardrobe steadily decrease in vibrancy from the bright pink that we associate her with to grays and dark colors like Wickham wears. She increasingly has dark circles under her eyes and looks tired. You get the sense that this fight that she's having with Lizzie is taking a much larger toll on her than it is on her older sister, who is just away at Pemberly Digital at this time. Wickham plays masterfully into every insecurity Lydia has about the fact that Lizzie doesn't even watch her videos. We see him coming back to pick seeds that he planted months ago.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Bennet sisters.
I've seen Jane and Lizzie. They have their own little clique, the Bennet sisters. And you're never going to be in between that. Jane is always going to side with Lizzie, and then what? They're going to try and break us up? And where does that leave me? Or where does that leave us?
Every instinct that she has to deepen the divide that she feels between herself and her sisters, he plays into and manipulates further and further.
I mean, I'm here for you, Lydia. Where are they? But I guess you'd rather be by yourself, so...
No, please, don't go, please. I didn't mean it like that. You have to believe me. It's just, she's my sister, but I wouldn't listen to her if she said that. She won't, but I wouldn't.
I said before, I think Wes Adderholt did a really, really good job portraying George Wickham, and it comes down to the absolute chills that these send down my spine. Some of these, especially when he starts to address Lizzie in what is very clearly him using her baby sister to try to get at her for sharing a corrected version of the story he had told, feel like a ransom note.
Hey, Lizzie. It's George. I don't know if you remember me or not, but maybe if you're watching this, I hope you are, or in the future. I just wanted to say thank you for listening to Darcy and kicking me to the curb, because if you hadn't, I wouldn't have had the chance to reconnect with your little sister here. And I am so happy that I did. Anyways, when you watch this video, I hope that you understand what she means to me and just how happy we are together. I couldn't have done it without you. Thanks, Peach.
The final video that uploads to Lydia's channel is the first that we see without him in weeks, but it still is entirely about him. This is a 4-minute horror monologue. Again, Mary-Kate Wiles' acting in this is just so good.
I feel good enough for somebody for once. Is that weird? It's really nice. All you really need is that one person who's always got your back. And I think I found mine. You know, I love you, George. It's like we're standing on the tallest building and nothing looks like it does on the ground and nothing else matters but us. That's totally lame. I'm sorry. But I love George Wickham. I love George Wickham. And he loves me back. How about that?
And this all is playing out like a nightmare inverse of these sweet, hesitant little interactions that we're beginning to see between Lizzie and Darcy at Pemberley.
Gigi told me you wanted me.
She did.
Yes, for an interview? For your independent study?
Yes. Yes. That is, if you have the time and don't mind appearing on my videos again some more.
No, I don't mind. And yes, I have the time. Or I'll make it.
Great. Let me just get the door.
The boot doesn't drop for Lizzie that Wickham is in the middle of emotionally terrorizing her baby sister, even after hearing about everything that Gigi went through with him when she gets a new phone. She says she's been missing calls and she's in the middle of a conversation where Darcy is finally working up the nerve to ask her out when she finally gets it.
So how are you doing today?
Today is a pretty good day, actually. And you?
Well, hopefully it will be a good day, too.
Was there something you needed from me?
Oh, no. I mean, that is to say, yes, I wanted to ask you something.
Okay.
My sister and I have a box at the theater, and I was wondering if you would like to attend tonight. Oh, do you need to answer that?
No. It's just finishing activation. And yes, I would love to attend the theater with you and Gigi.
Well, actually, Gigi has an engagement, so it would just be you and me.
Sorry, new phone.
She doesn't even just realize that Lydia and Wickham have been hanging out and that she feels like she should warn her sister. She has missed calls and text messages from Charlotte because Charlotte has seen the link to what Wickham has done sooner than she has. Wickham coerced Lydia into filming them having sex. And he has decided to release it and to put it on a countdown clock, a website that would come out on Valentine's Day. Lizzie's response to this, especially now that she knows what happened with Gigi and Wickham, is heartbreaking to watch. It still made me cry this time. A lot of these scenes that we're about to talk about made me cry really, really hard this time.
Apparently, he set up a website asking for subscriptions to a sex tape with YouTube star Lydia Bennet. There's a countdown clock. Oh my god. I could have prevented this.
Lizzie, this is not your fault.
Well, then whose fault is it? I could have told Lydia exactly what kind of person George Wickham was, but instead I've just been petty. I haven't even spoken to her since Christmas. I don't know what good I can do, but I have to be there. I have to try to talk to Lydia. I just have to go home.
I remember watching this and crying like a baby as a teenager, and that's not so out of the normal for how I engaged with media at the time, but not a lot of things that used to have me full on hard of breath sobbing still make me cry when I rewatch them as an adult. This did.
Lizzie, let me help you. Stop.
You can't. No one can.
Yes, I can. Now, if you need to get home, I will book you a flight out. We can have your things packed and sent to you. Just please tell me what's going on. On the phone, you mentioned George Wickham.
Just as he is in the book and in the movie adaptations, Darcy is cool and collected while Lizzie is spinning out about this. He helps her to get home and very quickly stops being a priority in the story as far as Lizzie is concerned. She's very, very regretful for what has happened to give her sister the ability to be so won over by George Wickham, and she doesn't understand yet the extent to which Lydia truly has been victimized. The next time that we see her talking about it, she's very clearly under the impression that this is something that Wickham had convinced her to monetize. And that's not something that feels outside of the realm of what Wickham might have done when you look at some of these other things that got dropped in earlier as foreshadowing.
She's not gonna spill her drink on me again, is she?
Well, let's hope not. But you would not believe the views I got on that video.
Really?
Really?
Well, that is a sacrifice that I'm willing to make for the viewers.
Oh, no, George. That's very noble of you.
Lizzie returns home and is recording in the den because her mother turned her room into a yoga studio, and is convinced that this will just be a matter of convincing Lydia to take it down.
And if Jane doesn't know and Mom and Dad don't know, it means there's a chance I can talk to Lydia and get her to take this site down before things get any more out of hand. I can't believe this is happening. This is my little sister. My baby sister.
We see a change in the way she talks about her sister from some of the things she said earlier to even just, while she still thinks that this is somehow Lydia's doing, still being defensive of her.
I don't even know. I don't know how George talked her into this. I tried to watch some of the videos she made with him, and honestly, I couldn't get through one. Let's face it, George has a history of convincing smart women to do dumb things. I know how charming he can be, and then he's manipulating her. Hopefully, I can convince her to stand up to him.
Just like with that scene I loved so much earlier with Fitz not knowing what information he was giving Lizzie, we lean full tilt into the miscommunication drama that Pride and Prejudice is at its core. When Lizzie is saying, "How could you do this?" Lydia thinks she means, "How could I be in a relationship with this man who is the first person who's ever treated me kindly?"
Fine. You want to put everything on the internet? What's one stupid little conversation, right? You never stop, do you? This isn't about me. This is about you. How on earth could you possibly think this was a good idea?
What are you talking about?
I know, okay? I know about George.
What goes on between me and George is none of your business.
You're making it everyone's business.
He said you wouldn't understand. Can't you just be happy for me for once?
Have you lost your mind?
It's not until Lizzie hands her her phone and wants an explanation for the website that Lydia even knows that it exists. She's still under the impression that Lizzie simply disapproves of her relationship when she finally sees what Wickham has done, and she completely freezes.
This is a joke, right?
This is a scene that I think about constantly. It's the scene that I was thinking about earlier when I was saying what a good job this show and Mary-Kate Wiles in particular does with Lydia and with this relationship with Wickham. I still think constantly about the brokenness in her voice in this part.
You didn't know. Oh my god.
No, this is not real. This is not happening. He would never. He loves me. He loves me. This isn't.
Lydia.
No. He said.
Lizzie directs her viewers not to watch the website, which at the time there was a countdown clock, as if this really was going to happen to this character who we all loved and felt so deeply towards.
So I posted that to show you, in case there was any doubt. that my sister had nothing to do with putting that on the internet. She's not making money from it. This was done without her consent. And to show you just how this whole thing is affecting my sister, please don't subscribe to that website. Please don't give that man what he wants and help him humiliate my sister. Just, please. Think about what you saw and stay far, far away from it.
Ashley Clements is unbelievable in these scenes.
I went back and watched all of Lydia's videos. I don't know that girl. It's like my sister is a person I've never met. And then I thought about it. And how could I not have seen her when she was standing right in front of me?
I've given a lot of credit to the acting chops of Mary-Kate Wiles, and they both really, really hold down these emotional scenes in a way that makes it feel so genuine. I am a little bit astonished thinking about what it would take as an actor to have to portray both Lizzie trying to address her camera and breaking without breaking the character of Lizzie Bennet, who keeps crying and reacting to this really charged emotional situation that she's in.
Sometimes I feel so clever and rational and appropriately analytical about the world around me. I'm a grad student. It's what I do, what I'm supposed to be skilled at doing, communicating and relating and acknowledging that people do not fit into neat little boxes all wrapped and tied up in string. But here we are. My name is Lizzie Bennet. And I'm out of tools for this.
It is really, really flawlessly executed. I feel like this is a part of the story where it would be really, really easy to fumble the vlog style format, but we've seen so much about Lizzie and the way that she's talking about things and the way that she processes things with the use of her channel. It all makes sense for this to be something we're seeing, even though it also feels like such a personal moment between these actors.
Oh, let me...
No. That's why I'm here. For my quick fix. That's how things work on your videos, right? Somebody wanders in and talks about their problems, and by the end everything is magically better. Or on the way to it. I'd do it myself, but my videos just catalog a car crash.
I don't want to film this, Lydia. I don't want to put this on the internet.
Why not? Everything else will be.
No. We are going to figure this out. No one is ever going to see that.
That doesn't matter.
Even once we think that Lydia sees Wickham for what he is and what he's done, she's still a little bit defensive of him. Of course she is. She loves him. He made very sure that she would love him and that she felt like it was the two of them against the world. And then he completely cut contact with her after he dropped the website for the sex tape.
None of this would have happened if I hadn't been acting like a stupid, hoary slut again, right?
Oh, no, Lydia. No, no, no.
I let him film us having sex. Lizzie, I let him do that.
That doesn't make it okay for him to take advantage of you.
Are you not listening? I let him film that. I said it was okay. He said that I didn't love him as much as he loved me, and I needed to prove it. So I said okay. So that he wouldn't leave. How freaking pathetic is that? I went after your ex. I said terrible things about you. I didn't talk to anyone or listen to anyone. I trusted someone you all said I shouldn't. Everyone who watches these knows how I felt. But he never made me do anything, so just tell me that I didn't get what I had coming, Lizzie. Just try to tell me that.
You didn't. Lydia, that's not how life works. You don't deserve awful things because you trusted someone who was there for you when no one else was around. You don't deserve this, Lydia. Not you. Never you. This is on him. He's a monster.
He's not a monster. He's, I don't know what he is. But I could be. Someday.
You are nothing like him.
Aren't I?
Why would you think that?
Because if he's all bad, then what does that say about me?
Doesn't say anything about you.
Really? The only person who would... I thought he loved me. I thought that I was, for once, good enough for somebody. No, I'm okay. I don't need anyone.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do, and I'm here.
I'm here. Why didn't he love me, Lizzie? I love him so much.
I love you.
Why didn't he love me?
I love you. Do you hear me? I love you. You are not alone. I'm sorry I wasn't there before. I'm sorry I didn't understand, but I love you.
The quiet here, the lack of the outro theme that has been a constant so far in the series while Lizzie just holds her sister is completely gutting.
Lydia, I want you to know how sorry I am for the things I said to you on and off the internet. I don't think I didn't really know you, I guess.
I didn't really let you. And I'm sorry too.
Despite her hope that George Wickham would eventually take down the website, Lydia is the one who finds out that Darcy is the reason that the website is never fully published.
This is a conversation you want to have on camera?
Don't worry, it's fine. I think this is something you're gonna want on your videos.
Okay. What do you want to talk about?
Darcy.
She tells Lizzie what she figured out and sees what we as the audience see, that this was something that Darcy did because of how he feels about Elizabeth, but Lizzie refuses to take this for what it is. Lizzie assumes that if this were a big grand gesture that he probably would have called her or texted her, and he's been quiet since she left Pemberley. She debates on how she could possibly thank him for something like this. The adaptation in the book is that even though Wickham has squandered the money that Darcy gave him previously, once he's married to Lydia and there needs to be some kind of funding for the two of them to live their life and Lydia not to be quote-unquote a ruined woman, he gives him and Lydia enough money to survive on. Obviously, George Wickham doesn't need to be paid for what he's done in this circumstance. And I thought, until I came back around for my rewatch, that a lot of this happened significantly more off camera than it did. So even though this isn't context that Lizzie has at the time while she's focused on her sister, I want to talk about Darcy and his sister. First of all, just this casting, beautiful. I love. They look so related. They're very cute. I also love these little moments that we have, like when Gigi is talking about how awkward Darcy is, and we get to see another light of him through his sister's imitation.
When William and Lizzie met last year at Stuart's wedding, did my brother actually dance with this lovely lady as though she were covered in fleas?
I didn't say that.
I know, but I have seen my brother dance.
Gigi, your brother is my best friend in the whole world. But that was the most awkward dance ever.
Oh no, did he do that thing when he gets uncomfortable where he pulls his chin back to his neck?
I thought that's just how he held his head.
Don't be silly, you just think that because nothing.
It's so fun when we finally get to see the side of Darcy that his doting younger sister and his friend Fitz see and have been trying to positively portray to Lizzie.
The production facility on the 3rd floor has a wardrobe department. So, Lizzie B, tell me all about how you're getting on at the Pemberly.
I love that it is actually more in line with what Jane has been portraying this whole time. And also, it's just really fun to think about the fact that this actor who portrays Darcy wasn't cast yet at any of the points when they were first coming up with what their impression of this guy was. Another reason that I think that it took him just a little bit to kind of settle into the skin. This guy had to incorporate these mannerisms that people were making up to make up a version of him and then come up with a real life person those would fit. And somehow he did it.
So, what should we sing?
Well, I always go for the classic musicals.
So, Rodgers and Hammerstein?
That's not classic, that's old. I'm sorry, I can't do this.
No, why?
It's just too strange. Pretending to be my sister. I don't want her to think that I'm mocking her, or... I apologize, that's a harsh word.
No, I understand.
Daniel Vincent Gord does an amazing job as Darcy, and I especially love when we get to see him with his sister in some videos that I didn't even watch when they were first coming out. Gigi's little side plot that gets uploaded on the Pemberly digital channel is one that I thought was just immersion that I wasn't particularly interested in. I was under the impression that it was something along the lines of the Collins and Collins How to Change a Light Bulb tutorials or him showing how to eat a sandwich, and I remember seeing it and just never really clicking on it. And oh boy, do I regret that. I've always loved Gigi and wished that we got more of her in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, and this was the perfect cure for that. Of course, I would have liked more Gigi content, but for the point of the story that she comes in, we get a really good amount of her, because she gets to go from prop, character motivation object in the book to a fully fledged person and kind of the hero of how this whole Lydia and Wickham thing resolves. Gigi is performing a product demo for a new Pemberly digital video editing software. This has some AI feature that automatically cuts to whatever's most interesting, so every time she gets off subject and starts doing personal business, that's what we as the YouTube audience got to see in the uploaded final video. A clever workaround for an intensely unprofessional demonstration of a product. In these product demos, though, we get to see something that we don't get to see from Lizzie's point of view. What Darcy is up to during this quiet period while she went back to deal with her sister and was trying to figure out what, if anything, they can do about the sex tape online. Gigi calls him and we see him looking tired and also worried that she's going to re-traumatize herself by being involved in this.
Gigi?
William, what are you doing?
Nothing that concerns you.
Oh, it is absolutely my concern.
Are you calling me on the demo?
Yes? But don't change the subject.
Conversation is over.
No, William, don't hang up on me. Just at least tell me you're helping them.
I am trying.
Then I am helping too.
Gigi, I forbid you to be involved in this. You're too vulnerable.
I'll be fine.
You weren't last time. Do you remember what that was like for you? I cannot see you hurt again. This could reopen every wound you've healed since.
I'm stronger now.
Are you?
It doesn't matter, William. Okay, just think about that family. We cannot let this man hurt anyone again. I need to help you.
He repeatedly asks her not to get involved, and Gigi is too stubborn for that. We get some really, really slick setup of a rule that will pay off later when she calls Fitz on the program and he has to accept the terms and conditions in order to pop up on video.
Just push the icon on your screen and be sure to accept the terms of service.
Wait, this one here. Hey-o!
And she convinces him to give her the phone number that they've managed to track down for George Wickham, who has been ignoring everybody else.
Give me the number.
Why? We don't even know if the number's legit.
If it's not legit, then what's the problem?
Well, the problem isn't if it's not legit. The problem is if it is.
Just give me the number and don't tell my brother.
Okay, yeah, that convinced me. I'm just gonna go ahead and get right on that.
Fitz, come on, just give me the number.
No! Look, your brother and I are trying to protect you.
I don't need protecting. I need to help find him. I can do this.
When she texts him and tries to bait him into calling her so that they can figure out where he lives, he downloads their software. He has to accept the terms and conditions in order to pop up on video chat.
Oh, hey, are you still swimming? Wait, what's this? Push for video.
Oh, no, don't push that.
Oh, that's cool.
Gigi is rattled by seeing him unexpectedly, and her brother immediately calls her afterwards to check on her, but also to praise her because George downloaded the software.
I'm not mad. I only need to know if you're all right.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I know you warned me, but I had to try. I thought it would help.
It did.
What?
He downloaded Domino.
Yeah, he activated it and I saw his face and he downloaded the app. He accepted the terms of service. You can see his info. You can use that, right?
Get some rest, Gigi. I will see you in a couple of days.
The fact that he accepted their terms and conditions now means that Darcy is able to use that information to track him down. I really like this angle of Darcy's wealth in the book being something that he had that was kind of intrinsic to his own position of privilege that meant that he could solve this problem for Elizabeth. And even though the money aspect did help in this one, it was really his tech company and the kind of know-how of him and his sister who knows where to look for him because she was in love with him once. Even though Gigi wants him to immediately tell Lizzie what he's done, just like in the book, Darcy takes no immediate credit for this. He's kind of under the impression that since he had asked her out right before she left, the ball is back in her court. The foiling between Lydia and Gigi in the book is so much less intense than this, and I just really love the way that they played it out and how much it adds to every other character as it does. Jane also returned home to be with her sisters, and she has a really good conversation with Lizzie about paying more attention to Lydia and how much Lydia obviously loves and has wanted Lizzie's attention.
Yeah, well, it was my job to protect Lydia. Messed that up.
Stop it. This isn't your fault.
Isn't it? I brought George into our lives.
That doesn't make you responsible for anything he's done. Right now, I need to be here.
A lot of good being here does when Lydia won't even talk to us. It's not really anything we can do.
No, it's not about doing anything. It's just about being here and her knowing that she does not have to go through any of this alone.
I'm glad you're here. She always listens to you. I doubt she'll want anything to do with me. Not that I would have the slightest clue what to say to her. Everything I do just makes things worse.
Lizzie, have you watched her videos?
I tried, but it's really hard to see her with George, and I've been working to find a way to get this stupid site taken down.
Maybe you should watch all her videos. Lydia listens to you, to both of us, but sometimes I think that we forget to listen to her.
I'm going to be talking more about Ashley Clement's podcast in just a little bit, but I really, really like the things that she has to say on that podcast about how important this dynamic between Lizzie and her sister has been to the audience of this show over the years.
As much as people love the Darcy stuff, I have heard from hundreds of people over the years about how impacted they were by Lydia's story and the sisterly relationship between Lizzie and Lydia. And all people ever write to me about Darcy is, when do I get my Darcy? And I don't have the answer to that because Darcy is a fictional character. But I don't hear, people don't reach out to me about the romance the way that they reach out to me about, saying things like watching Lizzie treat her sister that way and then learn to treat her sister differently affected the way I treated my own sister. And, you helped make that.
I think being able to inject something like that and have it be so meaningful inside of something that's already so deeply beloved for being a love story is just so impressive. And I really can see, since I can see how this resonated with me as a younger sister, how this might resonate with older and middle siblings. Jane lost her job to come home to be with her sister, but she gets another job opportunity as things are beginning to resolve. Bing finally decides that it's time for him to come to his own decisions, and he comes and asks Jane what was going on the night of his birthday party when he had convinced himself to let Darcy and Caroline make his choices for him. She and Bing had agreed to just be friends and to have a fresh start together, and when she tells him that she's moving, he asks to come with her.
I couldn't have you asking me to stay. This is a really incredible opportunity, and there's no way I'm gonna miss it. How unfair would it be for you to ask that of me?
Jane, I
In
wouldn't...
this fresh start, it's not enough for me to just give up my career.
Jane, I'm not asking you to stay. I'm asking if I can go with you.
Bing says that he hasn't been truly happy since the last time he was with her.
I was heading to a lecture one day and I suddenly realized I didn't want it. Any of it. And then I went to a cafe and I was staring at a cup of coffee for 8 hours trying to remember why I wanted to be a doctor. And then I realized it was never really my choice. My family wanted me to be a doctor and I wanted my family to be happy. But I wasn't happy anymore. I couldn't even remember the last time I was happy. Until I remembered you. But I didn't even listen to what I wanted then either.
I was happy with you too.
I don't expect you to want me anymore. I know I said that I wanted to be friends with a clean slate, but that's not the truth. I want to be a part of your life, and you're already a big part of mine. I just hope that you give me another chance.
In New York? Bing. No. I'm sorry. That's too much. You can't.
Jane relents on him moving with her because she loves him too, but she insists that they get their own apartments once they move out there, and he totally agrees.
If we do this, if you...
Come with you to New York.
It wouldn't be coming with me. Okay, you would have to get your own place, and I would get mine. That's the first rule.
Yeah, rules. Rules are good.
We're different people now. I'm going for my career, for my life.
And I would be going for mine too.
There are plenty of people to help in New York.
Well, I think I can set some things up.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, you can come with me.
Charlotte gets to return throughout the next and last several episodes of the series as a result of her getting control of the U.S. headquarters of Collins and Collins after she convinced Ricky to move to Manitoba with his fiancé. There are like a couple little jokes about Ricky making employees sign an NDA and that she's legally not allowed to say anything about his fiancé. I think we might be talking fiancé with one E. Charlotte is on the same team as the audience and also Lydia that she should call Darcy, but it still takes her a little bit of convincing because we still have a couple more episodes. Lizzie still has no idea what to make, especially now that she knows that Darcy was the one who took down the website. She leaves him a message, and on their shared birthday, Charlotte has her talking on camera about her feelings, her worries that she's used up all of her chances with Darcy.
It's not like he owes me anything. He's already done so much, and maybe he doesn't want anything to do with me.
It hasn't been that long. Maybe he's trying to figure out proper wording. I mean, he does sometimes have trouble expressing himself.
It doesn't take 3 days to return a phone call, even to just be polite. I'm getting the brush off. And that's fine, because he deserved more from me.
More?
More consideration, more understanding, less judgy McJudgment.
But you deserved more from him, too. And so much has happened since then anyway.
Not enough, I guess.
I'm sorry.
Second chances are rare. I think I used all mine up. Hey, do you need money for the tip?
Excuse me, Lizzie.
Darcy shows up, endeared as always by Lizzie's constant filming.
Do you film everything in your life?
No. I swear, you just have impeccable timing.
Well, I can't begrudge your videos, certainly. They've been very useful from my perspective.
Even now that they know that they like each other, his awkward dialogue makes some of the ways that Lizzie quoted him out of context earlier make sense and feel believable.
You called me.
I left a message. Yes.
I was in Chicago, so that's why I didn't get back to you
God,
sooner.
I didn't intend. I thought you would just call me back. You didn't have to come here.
Yes, I did. I needed to see your face when I asked you why.
Why?
Why did you call me? I know, I've been watching your videos, and I know that you have found out certain things about recent events.
Recent events? You bought up whole companies to save my sister for what you've done for my family. We cannot thank you enough.
Your family owes me no thanks. As much as I've learned to respect them, I did not do it for them, I did it for you.
My gratitude is there and always will be.
Lizzie, I have to admit to some confusion because you also said in your videos that we are not friends. And I realized you were right. As much time as we spent together in San Francisco, we hadn't become friends, and then I thought perhaps you wanted to amend that.
I do.
So you want to be friends?
Yes. Well, I mean, God, no wonder you're confused.
Lizzie, I still feel the same way I felt back in the fall. More strongly even than I did then. So if you just want to be friends or say thank you for recent events, then
Does that clarify some things for you?
Some. I could use some further illumination on certain points, however.
Darcy tells Lizzie that nothing about his feelings have changed since that initial letter and confession back at Collins and Collins. And I love the way that Lizzie is just touching him like she doesn't want to let go of him. She tells him everything that he needs to hear about the nature of their relationship. That her opinion isn't changed because of what he did for Lydia, but that she is grateful for that. That very slowly, over the course of their many, many interactions, she has changed her opinion on him. Darcy offers to set up an entire department around her after she graduates, and she says thank you but no, and decides to start her own visual media company. Part of this comes along with her realizing that she doesn't want to continue making her vlogs. I really like that this show knew when to end. I don't think it was ever really a question whether or not they would continue going after Lizzie and Darcy got together. That is also the end of the novel, pretty much. But we've seen so much of how the videos have both positively and negatively impacted Lizzie's life that it makes sense that she would want to continue with that as a career, and also that she would do that in a way that we as the audience don't continue to see. It's impressive to make the end of the character deciding to post on the platform that the show lives on feel like a genuine moment of character growth, but they really did manage to pull that off on the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. I'm happy for Lizzie that she doesn't feel the need to continue making vlogs. The final time that we got to see this Lizzie and Darcy together on screen came in the form of a video epilogue Q&A session that was filmed and uploaded in fiction as if it was supposed to be part of a class that the teacher who had put together Lizzie's visit to Pemberly Digital was teaching. This is, of course, because the Gardeners in the book are a couple who, like everyone around Lizzie and Darcy, see that the two of them are pretty much perfect for each other and nudge the two of them together. In this version, she teaches a class, and because Lizzie had been so popular and had done such a good job with her videos as a result of Dr. Gardner's class, she filmed a Q&A session, but it's very Lizzie and Darcy questions heavy and not very much on what Lizzie's company actually does. Like I said before, we know pretty much enough about what Lizzie is doing next to know that she's not in front of the camera anymore, but it doesn't seem particularly fleshed out. You can feel a lot of that lack of ability to actually give us anything in these two episodes.
What was it like when your mother found out about the videos? Interesting.
And that is not a criticism in terms of ability, like writing ability, because these episodes were written by Kate Rorick, who wrote some of the best episodes of the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. I mean lack of ability to give us anything of depth, because these fundamentally were just a commercial.
Trust me, I wrote it all down in my diary.
The episode is fun and sweet, and it was especially a nice little treat when it unexpectedly dropped about a year after the show finished uploading and existing. But fundamentally, this is a commercial.
This is the question I've gotten the most, hands down. What, specifically, was in Darcy's letter?
I don't remember. Well, obviously the contents were divulged in your videos, but I can't recall my phrasing or specific wording. Lizzie destroyed the letter when she was done with it, so I suppose we'll never know. You did get rid of it, didn't you? I remember asking you to do so in the letter.
Oh, you remember that. I couldn't destroy the letter, so I kept it in my diary.
I think for what she had the chance to do and also what she needed to do in the first place, Kate Rorick actually did a very good job of balancing, giving enough fan service that some people in the comments don't seem to notice that it was a commercial.
Forever Floating on Air says, This was all fan service, and I loved every second of it. Oh, it's nice that you think that, but it was actually all meant to make you buy a book.
An advertisement that worked on me as a teenager when I got that book for my birthday, and worked on me as a 25-year-old woman when I grabbed that audiobook from the library and read it because of this. It's nice to have the chance to see Lizzie again and to see Darcy again, especially because Darcy took off just a couple of episodes before the end of the show. We got enough of him to know that their relationship was good and solid and heading out, but I think having him leave to go deal with his business and letting the core of the show resolve itself with Lizzie was really smart because she was the tie from the beginning. It makes sense for him to be there now because they're living together in San Francisco, and these tie into a Twitter campaign that happened that was the first after the postscript epilogue, which consisted of a bunch of How I Met Your Mother style bar hangout photos of the cast. The hook for the Twitter campaign was that Lizzie had to come home and help clean out her mother's house because they were selling it. And in the process of that, she found her diary, and you're reading the diary, that's the book. The set of these commercials is also really cute. I, in general, love all of the set dressing for this show, and even more now that I have more information, thanks to Ashley Clements' podcast, about what a shoestring budget it really was made on at the beginning. Lizzie's bedroom was somebody's real bedroom, and the props were set up to look like it was Lizzie's room. And this one corner of the room that you can see in what's supposed to be her office in what she's filming is filled with props that come from the show. Jane had embroidered that big L for her while she was heartbroken over Bing leaving and trying to keep busy. The Darcy teddy bear is famously a gift from a fan. This show was very logged on in terms of posting fan art and having the stars and the writers see it and interact with it. And seeing that in the actual show is really fun too. The Secret Diary of Lizzie Bennet is a novelization that came out after the end of the series, clearly as evidenced by the year later commercial that they filmed. And it was written by Kate Rorick, and another producer, who I'm not going to name in this video, also has his name on it first, even though he did not write it. Kate Rorick wrote this book. I never actually finished this book the first time around when I was a teenager trying to read the physical copy of it, but the audiobook is narrated by Ashley Clements, and that was just as easy as listening to the show while I edit episodes would have been if I did a rewatch while I was editing, which was my other idea. So I did listen to the audiobook, and I was prepped via Ashley Clements' podcast that there were already going to be a few major retcons here. And they're retcons that make a lot of sense when you look back at when Kate Rorick joined the writing team for the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. I don't think that they're bad retcons. I don't consider them to be part of the canon of the show necessarily, but I don't think that that means that they're not good additions, and I can see the value in wanting to add something that Lizzie didn't put on camera. But my understanding from watching Ashley's podcast is that it had been decided upon by the cast and producers that Jane and Bing had not yet been sleeping together, and there is a pregnancy scare written into the Netherfield arc. Netherfield is the final arc before Kate Rorick joined the show. She was the final writer to join the team, and she had an established career already, not just in shows like some of the other writers, but as a romance novelist. She told unnamed producer, whom I don't enjoy, that she had basically memorized Pride and Prejudice, which is something you can absolutely tell when you're watching one of her episodes.
It's so pleasant to have one's house to oneself again.
The very first episode that she writes is the first one where Lizzie is home from Netherfield, and she immediately puts the core four together. It's actually the only time in the entire show where you'll see all four of the main cast members hugging each other like that. From what she said on Ashley's podcast, she had to kind of pitch and fight for that. And it's totally worth it because you don't get to see everybody else in one place again other than that. It's a nice shot and it gets used a lot. I think I'm using part of it in my thumbnail for this video. But that just goes to speak to how much Kate immediately understood the Lizzie Bennet Diaries and the dynamics between the four main characters and also the romance side of it that she would be bringing in later. She came in and in the show got to establish kind of where everything was tying back in together to move forward, and she had to fill in some things from before she was privy in the writer's room. I don't know to what level she knew that that's not what was going on with Jane and Bing and intentionally wanted to change it. Ashley Clements makes the point that it's more feminist, and I do kind of agree with that. Like, Lydia is very shamed for her proximity to the idea of being promiscuous, and Lizzie's prejudices against that are very much a part of the plot and an intentional thing that was being written in for her. But Jane and Bing probably would have been having sex, and playing with what might have happened with that does add a lot of depth to how Jane was feeling as Bing suddenly packed up and left. You can really, really feel how much Kate Rorick loves Pride and Prejudice in her episodes and in her novelization. For the novelization, she said that she created a big calendar with the upload dates for when all of Lizzie's videos would have been recorded and went live, and then had to work backwards to engineer what would have happened on which day and when. It did give me the feeling of making me want to start a rewatch, and then I was like, I might just get in a circle forever. I might need to put myself on a Pride and Prejudice pause. But hearing little things that I never even thought to wonder about get explained was kind of cute. Again, even though I think that that pregnancy scare is dissonant, I don't think it's bad. And I'm sure that this isn't surprising, but I used to be really into fan fiction, so I very much don't have a hard time turning off the part of my brain that insists on canon continuity. I was just like, oh, this is great. Okay. The book even goes to the pains of explaining real-world bumps in viewership that came from when people like Hank Green or Felicia Day retweeted the videos. Rather than ignoring the existence of that altogether, they say, oh, Lizzie emailed some people. She didn't think it would work, but they shared her videos. I just think it's cute. I like it. I also like that we get a bit more Charlotte in the book. I always wondered what her reaction was to Lizzie and Wickham, which isn't very explored in the show, but in the book, Charlotte refers to it as a bout of temporary insanity that Lizzie was going through. That feels very true to how both of them would have characterized that, compartmentalized it, and moved on enough not to think to warn Lydia, right? We do get a little bit more Lydia in the book as well. We learn here that her cousin Mary was the one who reached out to Gigi, and that's how Lydia learned that Darcy was the one who took down the website. And we get plenty more about Lydia in the second novelization that was released and was also co-written by Kate Rorick, The Epic Adventures of Lydia Bennet. Unlike The Secret Diaries of Lizzie Bennet, The Epic Adventures of Lydia Bennet was actually co-written. The co-writer for the Lydia Bennet book is Rachel Kiley, and Rachel Kiley was also a writer on the show. Rachel had been there from the beginning and had primarily taken point on Lydia before Lydia was even meant to have this large of a plot line. Other than just the fact that she wrote every episode on the Lydia Bennet spin-off channel, other than the one that Mary Kate Wiles provided of her cat to establish who Kitty Bennet was, there's a pretty easy tell for if a main series episode was written by Rachel Kiley or not. If it makes you cry, probably Rachel. I say this about everything, but I highly recommend watching the Ashley Clements podcast episodes where Rachel Kiley guest starred. Actually, all of these writers, when they guest starred on this show, have been so complimentary of each other and clear about where their ideas have stopped being theirs and started becoming more collaborative. And Ashley is really good at pushing people to accept praise when they're given it, which feels like a good thing to internalize. Some of that credit that Rachel Kiley gets came from Jay Bushman, who's one of 3 people who actually gets to hold a physical Emmy for the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. Jay Bushman was in charge of all of the interactive media portions of the show, and he was very clear that what he had initially pitched for Lydia was a sex tape.
I do want to sort of make it clear that I pitched sex tape, and that's what was accepted, but a lot of other people did a lot of really incredible work on it to push it from sex tape to revenge porn and to give it the weight and the sense of transgression and Lydia's like sense of betrayal and being used, and it's horrible. And I almost in retrospect like don't like saying sex tape because like that phrase seems a little like glib and a little needlessly provocative, and it doesn't convey the actual harm that happens that we're dealing with there.
On her Tumblr blog a long time ago, Mary-Kate Wiles posted about how she had initially been pitched the idea that Lydia was taking a Girls Gone Wild style photo, and she wasn't sure how comfortable she was with that idea.
When I saw the photo, which was so vulnerable, like just seeing how vulnerable Mary-Kate is in that photo it was a split feeling because part of me was horrified and the other part of me was like, oh, this is going to work really well.
A picture that she said that she thinks that Lydia and Wickham had taken after staying up all night talking. Things that tie into the kind of tweets that Jay Bushman was writing for the show as these things were happening. Just completely heartbreaking.
So we decided, all right, how are we going to get the idea of this sex tape out there? And I forget who came up with the idea, but it was, let's build a crappy website. We gave Katie the instructions, build a crappy website. And she was like, I can do that. That's awesome. That's awesome. And we came up with this plan where we were going to drop the first episode of the Domino spinoff, wait like an hour, and then start posting comments in that video with the link to the crappy website for the sex tape. And I remember the day, I think it was the day before I saw the website for the first time. Oh, and I should say also the website has a low-res banner, a photo, a countdown clock, and an email address for people to write to get put on the list or to find out when it was going to be released or to get more information. And I think it was the day before that I finally saw the website. And I have to tell you, like, I gasped.
I also learned from watching Ashley Clements' podcast that, like Rachel Kiley and Lydia, Jay Bushman had a particular affinity for writing for Gigi. I've already said how much I love Gigi and what they did with Gigi here, and I'll just repeat it. It's wonderful. And it makes a lot of sense that she would have been beloved by the writer because Jay Bushman and Margaret Dunlap, along with a lot of the other staff from the initial crew for the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, went on and continued to make more shows under the moniker of Pemberly Digital. I have so much to say about the real world Pemberly Digital, but we're putting a hat on that for now and continuing, because I don't have anything negative to say about Jay Bushman or Margaret Dunlap, who continued and went on to work on Welcome to Sanditon, which was the second Pemberly Digital visual media project. Welcome to Sanditon also got dumped into that Twitter promo campaign about Lizzie moving out and to get you to pre-order the first book. And it is based off of another Jane Austen novel. This one is actually an unfinished manuscript, and Gigi Darcy is the main character rather than the original protagonist of Sanditon. I didn't watch all of Sanditon, but I like Allison Page, and I like that she got to hang around as Gigi Darcy for a while. Welcome to Sanditon was a bridge from the Lizzie Bennet Diaries to Emma Approved, which a lot of the writers from the Lizzie Bennet Diaries continue to work on. Writers like Margaret Dunlap, who gets a lot of credit for the really brilliant adaptation with Collins and Collins and Charlotte. I hear that she took a lot of lead on that storyline. I think the fact that you can tell that this is such a passion project comes from the brilliance of just kind of letting people follow which threads they're most excited about. I love that, and I think you can really feel how loved these characters are by both their writers and their performers. I haven't watched Emma Approved yet. I will if there's any interest at all, like even a little bit, in another video like this. Let me know in the comments, please. But I haven't yet seen it. As I've already mentioned, Ashley Clements has a podcast called the Look Back Diaries. She also made a movie called Non-Transferable. I am really, really obsessed with Ashley Clements' podcast about the Look Back Diaries, and it definitely made me subscribe and decide to look into whatever else she does in the future. This isn't just a regular watch back show. She brought in a lot of the former cast and crew of the show. That's how I learned a lot about the behind-the-scenes writing process, things that I didn't just remember from being around while it was happening. It's also how I learned something that is deeply troubling, which is the fact that none of the actors on the Lizzie Bennet Diaries were particularly well compensated for this project. Especially /yeah, of course not even, once it was very, very profitable for the people who were making money off of it. The Look Back Diaries came out primarily during the Writers Guild and Actors Guild strikes in 2023, which means that the union solidarity that Ashley was expressing and the things that she teaches about royalties and streaming, really helpful stuff even outside of the microcosm of how the Lizzie Bennet Diaries just squeezed and screwed over their cast and their writers. Things that I'm just grateful that I know in general. I really can't recommend the podcast enough. Even if you're not particularly interested in the rewatch style format, there's only 100 episodes of that because there's one for each main episode of the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, and then you can watch her just talk about the Kickstarter, which I highly recommend you do. She had a lot of the former cast and writers featured on her show, and it was really great to check back in with them. Like Laura Spencer, who plays Jane and has had a handful of small screen roles, including in The Big Bang Theory and in an episode of Reservation Dogs in 2021. The latter of which I was very excited to see her in, and in the former of which I was aware of, because Mary is played by Brianna Cuoco, who is the sister of Kaylee Cuoco, who was in The Big Bang Theory, and also that show about the murders and the podcast, and it was really bad, but it could have been really good, and I really want to talk about it. Does anybody want to watch me talk about that? Please let me know in the comments. I would love to make a video about Based on a True Story. Mary-Kate Wiles in 2022 was actually in the live-action adaptation of The Fairly Odd Parents. She played Vicky. She also continues to make web content, like a short movie that she made with Ashley Clements called Spore, and in Headless, which also featured Julia Cho, who played Charlotte. I meant to say earlier when I was talking about Charlotte, and in case I didn't, Charlotte's greatness in this show, yes, is a result of the writing by Margaret Dunlap, who really likes her. But Julia Cho did such a fantastic job portraying Charlotte and all of her growth that she goes through, especially since most of that growth is off-screen. I just really want to make sure that I took a moment to say that. And she had a handful of TV roles as well as some podcasts, like one called The Case of the Greater Gatsby, which also featured Daniel Vincent Gord, who played Darcy. Maxwell Glick had been in Lonely Girl 15 before the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, and he featured in 3 episodes of an Emma-approved revival in 2018 that I didn't know existed. Again, if you want me to watch Emma-approved, I will. I'm not sure how that revival happened, but it looks like it only got a few episodes because, some things I have to tell you about later, considering the guy that I decided not to mention in this video. So, as evidenced by the runtime of this video, I think that there is a lot of credit to be given to the Lizzie Bennet Diaries for its adaptation, for the passion behind the adaptational choices, for its interactivity and creativity. But unfortunately, a disproportionate amount of that credit has fallen onto the wrong person. Unfortunately and intentionally. Not just the credit, but also all of the frankly unprecedented amount of profit that eventually came from this show that began as a scrappy little web series. An executive producer who I really didn't want to have the opportunity to take this video and add it to his list of accomplishments about how much people love something that he vampired the life out of and that got made in spite of him. Ashley's podcast is an amazing and brave example of pay transparency and union solidarity, like I said before, and of radical honesty and also grace regarding how much this man that I am not yet naming has completely screwed over the cast that made this show what it is. After you've watched those videos and gained a full understanding, come back over here, let's have a kiki about it, because I would sure love to talk about the time Bernie Sue killed the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. That's it. That's the video. I didn't realize it was going to be this long, hence the splitting, as well as the other reasons that I already mentioned. Please comment, subscribe, like the video if you liked the video. I would love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear if you want more videos like this in the future. If you think I need to condense a little bit next time. I really enjoy making videos and talking about shows and media, and it was fun to do that about one that I love so much. If you are interested in supporting me at all, I am a disabled, unemployed lesbian who is really just trying to make it through. I have a Ko-fi account, and you can find the QR code for that on screen here or in the description below. And thanks so much for watching. All right, I hope you have a great night, day, whatever time it is, the rest of that. And I will see you in the next video. In the meantime, maybe don't insult the entire family and social class of the girl you have a crush on, because she will think that you don't like her. Bye!